We are taught that history is a straight line, a steady march from primitive darkness to modern light. But what if that line is broken? From earthquake-proof polygonal walls in the Andes that no modern engineer can replicate, to radioactive skeletons discovered in ancient Indian cities, we confront evidence that defies our basic understanding of the past. How did primitive people form granite with the precision of a laser? Why do pre-ice age maps exist of Antarctica? These aren't just anomalies, they are the fingerprints of a lost human chapter. Silent proof suggests we are walking in the footsteps of giants we chose to forget. Join us as we reveal the truths history books are afraid to admit. In the harsh Enedi Desert, where the scorching wind burns like fire and the sky is veiled in fine yellow dust, the Aloba Arch rises like a forgotten gate to the heavens. Standing almost 100 meters tall, its shape is so precise, it seems too perfect to be natural. Two vertical stone pillars, bending into a slender arc that has resisted collapse for tens of thousands of years. Yet its greatness lies not only in its size or visual majesty. What has astonished archaeologists for decades are the ancient inscriptions, strange carvings scattered around and upon the arch itself. These are not writing in the usual sense, nor do they resemble any known symbol systems of Egypt, Berber culture, or Phoenician script. They carry the tone of something extremely old, deeply primitive, yet arranged with a precision that forces us to ask, who created them? And why choose Aloba Arch, one of the least practical places for any ancient person to visit? Why do you think ancient people chose such a remote place like the Aloba Arch to carve these mysterious symbols? Share your thoughts in the comments below. To understand the mystery behind the carvings around the Aloba Arch, one must first imagine the extreme harshness of today's Enedi region, one of the most desolate places in all of Africa. No villages, no springs, no trade routes, only endless stretches of sun-scorched rock formations. Even modern expeditions equipped with GPS, specialized vehicles, and ample water supplies must travel hundreds of kilometers across blistering terrain just to reach the arch. Yet thousands of years ago, in a time when conditions were far more unforgiving, an ancient group deliberately journeyed to this exact spot, paused here, and carved symbols unlike any known system ever found in the Sahel. Many of the markings are deep, straight, and sharp, giving the impression that they were made with metal tools, something that, based on current understanding, these people should not have possessed. Some symbols are positioned on rock faces so steep that modern climbers require ropes and equipment to reach them. Their placement alone reveals that these were not accidental scratches, but intentional acts. These ancient people came to Aloba Arch for a purpose significant enough to justify crossing the dangers and hardships of the desert. Even stranger, no signs of habitation exist around the area. Not a shard of pottery, no charcoal, no tools, no fire remains. This was not where they lived. So why did they come? Was it a ritual site, a journey marker, a message center, or a boundary symbol? Some researchers believe the inscriptions date back to the Green Sahara period, when this region had rivers, forests, and large animals. But even then, Aloba Arch would have been too isolated, too far from migration routes. Nothing in the environment explains why prehistoric people were drawn to a lone rock arch far off any natural path. The symbols around the Aloba Arch show no structure of a written system, yet they are far from random scratches. They follow deliberate arrangements, include repeating groups, and appear in positions chosen as if to emphasize something important. Several spirals were carved with great force and precision, far beyond instinctive marks made by hunter-gatherers. Some symbols even seem to echo cosmic ideas or the outline of a gateway between two realms. And from this, the central question emerges: why did they choose the Aloba Arch for these carvings? This question lies at the core of the mystery, and scholars debate it endlessly. Enedi is full of magnificent rock art depicting the daily life of the Green Sahara, people, animals, hunts. But all of those paintings are found in caves or near water sources. Aloba Arch is different. It offers nothing to humans, no shade large enough, no water, no food, no shelter. So why would someone travel dozens or even hundreds of kilometers just to reach this place and carve upon it? One of the most common theories suggests that the Aloba Arch was once regarded as a sacred place, a symbolic gateway leading into the realm of the divine, or a territorial marker of an ancient group that has long vanished. However, this explanation remains unconvincing, for it is difficult to believe they would choose such a harsh, empty, and impractical location for any kind of ritual activity. Another theory proposes that the arch served as a navigational landmark. Yet during the Green Sahara period, when the region still held scattered forests, fine dust, and undulating terrain, long-distance visibility would have been frequently obstructed, making a structure like the Aloba Arch nearly useless for orientation. There are also those who argue that this site functioned as a form of prehistoric message board, where groups left signs for one another. But if that were true, why carve these messages in a place almost impossible for anyone to find? The more each theory is examined, the less convincing it becomes, leaving behind a larger question. What were ancient people truly trying to convey at such an isolated and unforgiving location? The deeper scholars investigate, the denser the mystery surrounding the Aloba Arch becomes. The remaining symbols were not placed randomly. Many were carved onto rock surfaces, angled upward toward the sky, as if they were meant to be seen from above rather than from the ground. This detail has led some researchers to suspect that the site may once have been connected to sky-oriented rituals, possibly linked to the sun, the moon, or significant constellations. Yet every attempt to match these carvings with known ancient astronomical patterns has failed to produce a convincing alignment. Other symbols resemble the earliest forms of a symbolic language, a primitive method of communication, but the available data is far too limited to decode. The only certainty is this ancient people did not choose the Aloba Arch for convenience, but for meaning, a meaning that transcended survival practicality and logic itself. They came here with a purpose that remains beyond our reach even today. And here lies the core of the enigma. The mystery is not only the symbols, but the decision to choose Aloba Arch itself. When all practical explanations are removed, only non-practical reasons remain: ritual belief, cosmic understanding, or some symbolic form of communication used by an ancient community. Some scholars believe the arch represented a bridge between heaven and earth, a place where divine forces were thought to move. Others think the region served as a spiritual exchange zone between prehistoric groups. And still others argue the symbols were not meant to be read, but performed like a ritual act, calling upon unseen powers. Whatever the truth is, the central question remains unanswered. Why would they choose a place not meant for human presence to engrave these mysterious marks? This single question transforms Aloba Arch into one of the most puzzling sites in the Sahara, not because the writing is lost, but because the intention behind it remains unknown. That intention, like the towering arch itself, still stands unchanged, challenging every modern explanation. In human history, some civilizations step onto the stage and fade away so quietly that they almost vanish from memory. Yet few peoples leave behind a sense of profound mystery, like the Picts, the ancient inhabitants of northern Scotland, warriors who forced the Roman Empire to remain cautious, and a nation that nearly disappeared from historical record within just a few centuries. Their existence feels like a thick layer of mist covering the past, present in physical traces, yet all meaning and identity slip out of our grasp. What makes the Picts so extraordinary is not only their legends, their stones carved with indecipherable symbols or their ferocity in battle, but the fact that they vanished suddenly, leaving behind one haunting question: who were the Picts really? Who do you think the Picts really were? And what do you believe caused their disappearance from history? Share your thoughts in the comments below. To understand them, we must go back to the period when Rome first set foot on Britannia. When Roman legions advanced into Scotland, they encountered warriors described as the Painted Ones. Their bodies covered in deep blue patterns, appearing and disappearing through the dense forests and thick northern fog. The name Picti, meaning the painted people, was given by the Romans, not a name the Picts used for themselves. This makes their true identity even more obscure. Did the Picts really tattoo themselves, or did they only paint their bodies for war? No one knows, because they left behind no preserved skin, no mummies, only stones and legends. The language of the Picts is one of the greatest mysteries European archaeology has ever faced. Unlike other ancient civilizations, they left behind no complete writing system. What remains is only hundreds of carved stones, marked with repeating symbols, hunting animals, whales, abstract spirals, and the strange mirror and comb motifs. These carvings appear across a wide region, suggesting they once belonged to a unified system of communication, possibly a form of writing clan cipher or religious code. Yet without a deciphering key, without any bilingual text for comparison, these symbols remain sealed like doors without keys. They are fragments of a long-lost cultural soul, while the rest of the language, its sounds, meanings, and stories, has completely vanished with time. The near-total silence of the Picts in ancient records makes tracing the origins of their language an unprecedented challenge. Some scholars believe they spoke a Celtic tongue, but many others argue that Pictish was even older, possibly the remnant of a pre-Celtic language family that existed before the Celts spread across Europe. If this theory is correct, the Picts were not merely a warrior people, but the final echo of a culture that vanished millennia ago, an ancient legacy, surviving only in the faint traces they left behind. Among the remnants left by the Picts, nothing confuses archaeologists more than the vitrified forts, stone fortifications melted until they fused into glass-like masses. To reach such a molten state, the stones must have been exposed to temperatures of several thousand degrees Celsius, far beyond what any natural fire or early metalworking technology of the ancient world could achieve. This raises a series of unanswered questions. What kind of fuel did the Picts use? Was the vitrification accidental, or was it an intentional technique? Some theories suggest these were the remains of fire rituals in which the fort was burned to release the spirit of the structure. Others argue the melting was meant to make the walls harder, though no evidence supports this. Today, the vitrified forts still stand as silent reminders of a technology or a belief that vanished along with the Picts. Their religion is another fog-shrouded mystery. Archaeology suggests they practiced rituals involving water forest spirits, sacred animals, and subterranean ceremonial structures. Yet no text describes their mythology. We do not know whom they worshipped, what they believed, or how they explained the world. Some theories suggest they worshipped nature goddesses. Others propose shamanistic rites. Others see ancestor worship encoded within their stone symbols. But all of it remains speculation. Across the entire history of the Picts, nothing is more bewildering than their near-complete disappearance from written records in the 10th century. The strange part is this: they did not go extinct, and there is no evidence of large-scale warfare, famine, plague, or natural disaster capable of wiping out an entire people. Before this point, the Picts were still a powerful force with vast territories and a stable social structure, yet within a short span of time, they faded from history as if they had never existed. The most common theory claims they merged with the Gaels, but this assimilation was unusually silent, leaving no cultural, linguistic, or ritual traces typically seen in ethnic absorption. For an independent, strong and distinctly identifiable people to vanish without resistance or conflict leads many scholars to believe we may be fundamentally misunderstanding who they truly were, and that the mystery of the Picts runs much deeper than the historical record suggests. Among everything we know about the Picts, the greatest and most elusive question is their true identity. Where did they come from? What language family did they belong to? And why did such a powerful people vanish without leaving clear traces behind? Some scholars believe they were descendants of ancient indigenous populations who lived in Scotland long before the Celts arrived, while other theories describe them as a unique confederation of tribes that formed and dissolved over time. More daring hypotheses suggest that the Picts might have been the final remnants of a prehistoric culture lost to archaeology, with their enigmatic stone symbols being the only surviving echoes. The puzzle centers around three major gaps. First, they left no complete writing system, causing their names, legends, and traditions to disappear with time. Second, their carved symbols cannot be deciphered. No phonetic clues, no bilingual texts, no documents for comparison, leaving only speculation about whether they represent laws, religion boundaries, or even astronomy. Third, their disappearance occurred just as the rest of Europe began recording history more clearly, yet instead of appearing more in documents, they vanished entirely. The origins of the Picts therefore resemble a shadow in the night. We know they once existed, but the closer we try to approach them, the deeper they retreat into the mist of the past. The Picts may have been the last survivors of Scotland's original inhabitants before the Celts arrived. They may have been a particularly strong tribal alliance, powerful enough that Rome built walls to keep them out, yet flexible enough to merge quietly into another culture when circumstances changed. Or they may have been a transitional culture existing between two eras, carrying traditions too ancient to be understood, but not advanced enough to write themselves into history. All theories sound plausible, yet none can be proven. The only certainty is this: the Picts were unlike any other ancient people. They appeared with great presence, then disappeared completely. They left symbols, but not explanations. They wielded military strength that unsettled Rome, yet left no trace of their final fate. Perhaps within the thick Highland mist, the Picts still remain not in flesh and bone, but as a mystery that humanity has yet to unravel. The Sentinelese, one of the most mysterious and inaccessible human communities on the planet, live in complete isolation on North Sentinel Island in the Andaman archipelago of India. What makes them a haunting subject for both anthropologists and the public is not merely their isolation, but the fact that they actively reject any contact with the outside world in a clear, forceful, and unwavering manner for centuries. While most other tribes, however ancient, have some degree of interaction with modern civilization, the Sentinelese have chosen an entirely different path, as if they were guarding something sacred that no one is allowed to touch. Records from the 18th century to the modern day all show the same pattern. Anyone who approaches is driven away with arrows, spears, and unmistakable signals that the tribe wants to preserve their own world. This determination raises a question we still cannot answer. What are they protecting? What do you think the Sentinelese are trying to protect from the modern world? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The Sentinelese are believed to have lived on North Sentinel for at least 30,000 to 60,000 years, making them one of the few groups that have preserved a prehistoric lifestyle until today. They have no trade, no interaction with any civilization, and no written records. Everything we know comes only from distant observation, limited research, and speculation based on rare encounters, most of which ended unsuccessfully. Their language is completely undeciphered, unrelated to any other Andaman group, and no one has ever recorded a single confirmed word from their vocabulary. This suggests they may use an extremely ancient language or an isolated linguistic system that evolved independently for thousands of years. Even the name they call themselves is unknown. Sentinelese is simply a label given by outsiders based on the island they inhabit. North Sentinel Island is not an easy place to live. It is covered in dense, tangled rainforest that almost completely obstructs visibility, has no major rivers, lacks abundant resources, and is regularly battered by storms from the Indian Ocean. And yet the Sentinelese have survived and maintained a stable population. Satellite and aerial observations suggest their numbers may range from a few dozen to over 200 individuals, but the exact number is unknown. Even more remarkable is that they remain healthy despite having zero access to modern medicine, never having been treated with any scientific method. They may possess unique immune system survival habits and lifestyles that have allowed them to endure threats the outside world has long forgotten. Another strange aspect lies in their ability to observe, defend, and detect outsiders. On numerous occasions, Indian naval helicopters and boats have reported seeing Sentinelese show up on the beach, even when vessels were still very far away. Despite the thick forest blocking most lines of sight, they seem to always be aware of intruders entering their territory. They do not merely defend, they demonstrate a clear determination to guard the shoreline as an absolute boundary. This suggests they may possess internal signaling systems, designated lookouts, or simply a deeply rooted cultural instinct, compelling them to protect their land at all costs. Many see them as the last descendants of an ancient branch of humanity, living the same way their ancestors did, from prehistoric times until today, unchanged, unbroken, uninfluenced. Their culture, if ever discovered, could reveal a uniquely valuable doorway into understanding early human ancestors, social structures, rituals, belief systems, community organization, laws, natural education models, survival techniques, and disaster strategies. But everything lies behind the invisible wall they built between themselves and the world. No researcher dares to approach them and is legally prohibited from doing so. Indian law forbids any attempt to contact the island to protect both the Sentinelese and outsiders, for even a common cold virus could devastate them, while outsiders could face immediate hostility and lethal weapons. And then we arrive at the greatest question and the mystery that has troubled generations of scholars. Why do they reject the world? What belief, pain, or ancestral memory led them to close the door to modern civilization? A civilization that almost every other isolated tribe on Earth has interacted with to some degree. Many theories have been proposed, but none can be confirmed because no one has ever had a chance to ask the Sentinelese directly. One of the strongest theories is the historical trauma inflicted by British colonial forces on Andaman peoples, including kidnapping islanders for research. Even without writing, collective memory can be passed down through generations. Seeing outsiders bring disease, weapons, and destruction, the Sentinelese may have decided that the outside world must never be welcomed. Another theory suggests that their culture treats territorial protection as sacred. North Sentinel Island may represent more than a home. It could be an ancestral symbol, a place of origin, a complete world where they believe everything they need already exists. Leaving that boundary may be seen as breaking a sacred order, and allowing outsiders in could be seen as contaminating their pure world. Some researchers believe their isolation is a survival strategy designed to avoid diseases, something that once wiped out numerous tribes after contact with the West. The Sentinelese may not know terms like bacteria or virus, but through inherited experience, they know outsiders bring death. A deeper theory suggests their social system, stable for tens of thousands of years, has no space to absorb foreign elements. A tightly knit society, small in population without mechanisms for adapting to major change, may perceive outsiders as an existential threat, a threat to family structures, gender roles, laws, religion, rituals, and even their worldview. In other words, they are not only protecting their land, they are protecting their identity, something that could collapse from just a few improper interactions. And perhaps ultimately, they simply choose not to change, choosing instead to keep the rhythm of life handed down by their ancestors. Not because they fear civilization, because they do not need it. Any of these reasons, or all of them combined, are merely speculation. No one knows the real answer, and perhaps we will never have the chance to know. But it is precisely this silence, this refusal, and this fierce protection of their own world that has made the Sentinelese one of humanity's last great mysteries. A mirror reflecting an alternative possibility that on Earth, in the 21st century, there still exists a community living beyond time, apart from all chaos, all technology, all change, as if they are the last guardians of a primordial world the rest of humanity has long lost. Hidden deep within Petra's labyrinth of sandstone, where sunlight slips down only as faint, blade-thin streaks slicing across cliffs dozens of meters high, lies a secret that most visitors unknowingly walk right past. There, between narrow gorges and pockets of cold shadow, the little Sikh altars rest in silence like the lingering traces of a ritual erased from history. They are not grand like the treasury, nor majestic like the monastery, and they do not stand where people can easily reach them. Instead, they cling to dangerous ledges and retreat into deep shadowed hollows as if intentionally hidden from the world. And it is precisely this strange humility, this quiet refusal to reveal themselves, that makes them more unsettling, more captivating, and more mysterious than any monumental structure in Petra. It feels as though someone thousands of years ago wanted us not to discover what lies concealed within this narrow passage of stone. What do you think these hidden altar sites were truly used for, and why place them in such a secretive location? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The first striking feature of these altars is their unusual placement. Instead of appearing in ceremonial plazas or atop mountains like Petra's famous high places, the little CQ altars sit tucked inside a secondary gorge, narrower, darker, and far less traveled than the main CQ. Some altars are nothing more than a small platform, carved into the wall, positioned at odd heights, too high for casual use, yet too low to be considered true high places. This raises a central question: who used these altars, and why hide them from others? The most striking feature of the little Sikh altars is their almost unbelievable minimalism. The Nabateans' masters, who created wonders like the treasury and the monastery, were fully capable of building grand sanctuaries. Yet here they carved only small flat surfaces, a few channels and recessed niches directly into the rock, leaving no divine symbols and no inscriptions. This radical simplicity was not due to limited skill, but reflects deliberate intent. The rituals performed here may have been private, secretive, or sacred to the point that no images or writing were allowed. It is precisely this silence and emptiness that reveals a hidden layer of ritual we can sense but may never fully understand. The physical features of these altars have puzzled archaeologists for decades. Many contain small channels leading downward, possibly used for water, oil, or even blood offerings. Some surfaces are unusually smooth, suggesting they once bore objects, perhaps statues, offerings, or sacred items now lost. Some have rectangular cavities, others square platforms with no two completely identical. This variety does not correspond to any known Nabatean ritual system. Instead, they resemble ritual markers rather than formal temples. One of the strangest features of the little Sikh altars is their precise alignment with specific moments of the sun. Some stone platforms receive the winter sunrise for only a few minutes each year, while other narrow channels catch the exact ray of the summer solstice, not a degree off. This proves that the Nabateans chose these locations deliberately, guided by a deep understanding of the solar cycle. Yet unlike Petra's grand temples designed to showcase celestial light, the little Sikh altars are small, hidden, and almost intentionally concealed. This contrast raises a haunting question: why would a sun-related ritual be performed in the darkness of a narrow gorge far from any public eye? One often overlooked but deeply unusual feature of the Little Sikh is the acoustic effect created by its narrow, towering walls. With two nearly parallel cliffs enclosing the passage, even a whisper can ripple into multiple distorted echoes, traveling farther than expected. This would have made any ritual performed here feel more mystical, like the sacred echoes revered in many ancient cultures. At the same time, this resonance could have concealed the sounds of secret ceremonies, making it almost impossible for anyone outside the gorge to hear what was happening within. A major puzzle is that the little CQ altars resemble high places, the mountaintop sanctuaries used for major offerings. So why create miniatures of rituals meant for lofty heights? Were these places of preparation sites for preliminary rites, or substitutes for individuals not permitted to access the real high places? Perhaps the most surprising aspect is that no ancient texts mention the little CQ altars. There are no divine symbols, no human figures, no offerings left behind. Total silence. This suggests these altars were not part of standard Nabatean worship, but belonged to something outside their known religious framework. And silence in archaeology is often the loudest mystery of all. Debates over the true purpose of the little CQ altars have never reached a definitive conclusion, because each hypothesis points in a completely different, equally mysterious direction. Some scholars believe this was a place for secret rituals performed by a high-ranking priestly class, as the secluded, undecorated, and difficult-to-access locations suggest that only a very small group was permitted to carry out ceremonies here. Others view the Little Sikh as a ritual station for pilgrims where they purified themselves or offered small sacrifices before entering Petra, a city long regarded as a sacred realm. Another theory proposes that these altars served as spiritual boundary markers, signaling the moment a traveler crossed from the human world into the domain of the divine. Some researchers also trace them to ancient mountain spirit or local deity worship, since narrow gorges like Little Sikh were often believed to house supernatural entities in Middle Eastern traditions. The most intriguing hypothesis centers on a ritual transition between darkness and light. The sun touches these platforms only during rare moments of the year, creating symbolic instants of rebirth or blessing. Each theory carries its own weight, yet all leave behind vast, unanswered spaces, ensuring that the true purpose of these altars remains suspended between knowledge and the unknowable. This remains the most difficult and enigmatic question, unsolved after decades of study. No one knows the true reason. Perhaps it was the privacy, the sacred energy of the gorge, the solar cycle, the boundary between two symbolic worlds, or a concealed religious tradition now lost forever. Maybe the Nabateans deliberately hid something here, a ritual not meant to be witnessed, or a tradition too sacred to document. Today, archaeologists and scholars of Middle Eastern religions still cannot agree on a single explanation. Each altar feels like a fragment of a forgotten ceremonial memory lying silent for millennia inside the sandstone. That silence, the absence of clues, and the stubborn refusal of these altars to reveal their meaning make the Petra Little Sikh altar sites one of the most compelling ancient mysteries. Small structures that hold an entire, unseen world of ritual that humanity may never fully understand. Mount Hiei, situated between Kyoto and Lake Biwa, has long been regarded as one of the most mysterious spiritual sites in Japan. More than just a place of religious practice, this mountain once controlled spiritual authority, influenced political power, shaped an entire era. and raised countless questions that scholars, historians, and religious figures still debate today. To the Japanese, this is a land where the boundary between the human world and the spiritual realm almost dissolves, where normal logic no longer applies, and where the irrational becomes acceptable. Upon this very mountain, the temple complex of Enryakuji, the heart of Tendai Buddhism, grew into a religious stronghold so powerful that no one dared to challenge it. What do you think makes Mount Hiei one of the most powerful and sacred mountains in Japan? Share your thoughts in the comments below. In the 8th century, the monk Saicho chose Mount Hiei as the foundation of his sect. No one truly knows why he chose this exact mountain, but tradition says Saicho believed the mountain called to him, as if an unseen force guided him. From a small hermitage, Enryakuji expanded into a religious city spreading across the mountainside with hundreds of halls, study centers, meditation areas, bell towers, and structures hidden deep within the forest. Pilgrims describe stepping into Mount Hiei as entering another world. Dense fog, drifting incense bells, echoing from unseen directions, and beams of light piercing through the forest canopy like guides. What makes Mount Hiei extraordinary is that it is not merely associated with Buddhism, it became the origin training ground and spiritual cradle of nearly all major Japanese Buddhist traditions. The founders of Yodo Zen and Nichiren Buddhism all studied here. Those who left Mount Hiei to establish new sects often became the individuals who shaped the nation's spiritual destiny. Many believe Mount Hiei acts almost like a field of spiritual energy, where anyone who spends time here is transformed in profound ways. The warrior monks of Mount Hiei were far more than ordinary monks who happened to carry weapons. They were an organized, disciplined force, powerful enough to shift the balance of authority throughout Kyoto. At the cold summit and within the fog-soaked forests, they chanted sutras while training in martial arts, forging their will through austere discipline and a life that blended harsh asceticism with the mindset of warriors. Dressed in black robes, wearing light armor, and wielding razor-sharp naginata, they could confront samurai head-on, an almost unthinkable feat in feudal Japan. When angered, they did not send letters of protest or seek negotiation. They descended the mountain by the hundreds, carrying mikoshi as a symbol of threat, marching straight into Kyoto to force the court to yield. Strangely, only Mount Hiei produced this kind of warrior monk. Its harsh terrain, shadowed forests, and extreme training traditions are believed to have created a unique environment where spiritual intensity fused with combat discipline, making true peace nearly impossible. Speaking of extremity, Mount Hiei is also famous for the Kaihogyo, the 1,000-day mountain running ritual spanning 7 years. Practitioners must run up to 80 kilometers a day through the forest barefoot, sleeping very little, eating sparingly, and living in near total isolation. In ancient tradition, those who quit were required to take their own lives using a rope they carried. To this day, only about 100 monks have completed the Kaihogyo in over 1,000 years of Japanese history. Survivors are revered as beings who have walked through death. Nowhere else in the world exists a ritual so long-lasting and so unforgiving. Within Mount Hiei lie regions known as Kekai, sealed zones. These are areas where ordinary visitors are forbidden to enter. To ancient practitioners, Kekai were dwelling places of deities, places where the unpurified had no right to step. Even today, certain areas remain restricted because local spiritual tradition insists that intrusion could disturb the flow of energy or disrupt the mountain's sacred balance. This raises an unsettling question. Why is a mountain protected as if it guards something beyond human understanding? Another strange feature of Mount Hiei is how its structures seem to appear and disappear in the fog. Visitors claim that some halls reveal themselves only when the mist lifts, then vanish completely when the cold returns. Others claim they hear bells but cannot identify the direction. A temple may appear directly ahead, only to disappear when one shifts perspective. The dense forest and damp, chilly climate make Mount Hiei feel like a living labyrinth, where one's sense of direction becomes unreliable. This gives the mountain an aura of mystery, unlike anywhere else. Yet the greatest mystery of all does not lie in the mountain's history, architecture, or monks, but in the extraordinary power people believe it possesses. This brings us to a question that has persisted for over 1,000 years. Why is Mount Hiei so powerful? The three theories surrounding the mysterious power of Mount Hiei paint a broader picture of a mountain that exists not only as a geographical entity, but as a spiritual energy center in constant motion. The first theory suggests that Mount Hiei lies precisely at the intersection of the dragon veins running through Honshu, natural currents of energy, flowing across Japan like vital acupuncture points on the human body. According to ancient geomancy, wherever these currents converge, spiritual force intensifies, and any religious foundation built upon such a place becomes empowered by the energy of heaven and earth. The second theory views Mount Hiei through the lens of Onmyodo Japan's unique system of astrology and geomancy. In this tradition, the northeast is known as Kimon, the Demon Gate, where malevolent forces can easily enter. Kyoto, the ancient capital, faces this very direction, and Mount Hiei is believed to act as a spiritual shield protecting the city from invisible harm. Thus, constructing temples atop the mountain carried strategic significance beyond simple devotion, as if the entire Enryakuji complex was raised to guard the nation's destiny. The third theory is even more enigmatic, proposing that Mount Hiei's power comes from the monks, who undergo the Kaihogyo, the 7-year mountain-running ritual that pushes human limits to the extreme. People once believed that continuous self-denial combined with the elevated spiritual state the monks achieve generates a potent field of energy enveloping the entire mountain. Every step taken, every breath exhaled, every mantra chanted across those 1,000 days was thought to accumulate a kind of spiritual resonance, transforming Mount Hiei into a force center beyond human comprehension. Though the theories differ, they all lead back to one conclusion. The mountain's power is not merely historical or religious, it arises from something deeper, quieter, and perhaps forever beyond explanation. Yet even these theories failed to fully explain why Mount Hiei shaped Japan's religious destiny, or why those who trained here became extraordinary figures. Perhaps the mountain's mystery lies in its terrain, its history, or its grueling traditions, or perhaps it stems from something beyond our measurable reality. The Japanese say Mount Hiei is not merely a mountain. It is a gateway, a threshold, a field of invisible force wrapped in history, belief, and the unexplainable. And it is this very unexplainability that makes Mount Hiei one of the most sacred, enigmatic, and powerful spiritual locations in Japan. Hidden deep within the eternal icy mist of the Himalayas stands Drukgyal Dzong, the ruins of an ancient fortress rising from the cliffside like a forgotten phantom of a lost kingdom. Moss-covered stones, fractured walls, and leaning towers appear as though they have been battling time itself for centuries. Yet the most mysterious thing about this place is not its eerie silence, nor its nearly unreachable location. The true enigma lies in the question hanging in the air, like the very fog that wraps around the fortress. Why did the ancient builders construct such a colossal structure in a place where humans could barely live, could hardly survive, and were almost never meant to reach at all? What do you think was the real reason they built a massive fortress in such an impossible place? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Drukgyal Dzong stands in the narrow, rugged Paro Valley, where dense mist covers the land almost year-round, leaving the entire region suspended in a cold, dreamlike haze. Its name, Drukgyal, the fortress of the Thunder Dragon's victory, reflects the pride of 17th-century Bhutan under Jabdrung Ngawang Namgyal. Legend claims it was built to commemorate a triumph over Tibetan forces, yet closer examination by historians reveals a series of striking inconsistencies. A military fortress located in a place so inaccessible, so often blinded by fog, and offering almost no defensive advantage seems implausible. These contradictions make the story behind Drukgyal Dzong's true purpose increasingly difficult to believe. Imagine the scene of that era to haul stone blocks weighing hundreds of kilograms up to this freezing altitude. Workers had to cross slippery mountain slopes with no clear paths and absolutely no supporting tools. No carts, no pulleys, no machinery, only human strength, battling skin-cutting cold and a thick blinding fog. The builders raised each wall with numb hands, fitting every stone perfectly into place. And the astonishing truth is that after centuries of freezing and thawing, the structure has somehow preserved its sharp, precise angles. Their stoneworking techniques were so refined that they far exceeded what anyone typically attributes to 17th century Bhutan. Surrounding the fortress are towering cliffs where bells wind and sometimes strange sounds, like footsteps from the air, echo through the mist. Locals believe the place is sacred and protected by mountain deities. At dawn, before sunlight pierces the fog, many claim to hear metallic echoes, only to find no one around when they approach. While sound distortion in fog is real, the intensity of the phenomenon at Drukgyal Dzong defies simple physical explanation. One of the greatest controversies surrounding Drukgyal Dzong lies in the true purpose of the structure. After decades of research, historians have never uncovered any architectural plans, construction records, or original documentation, almost as if the fortress's entire history had been deliberately erased. Even more striking are the black scorch marks left on its stones. They do not resemble ordinary wood fire residue. Instead, they appear to have been caused by an extremely intense heat source, reaching temperatures far beyond what typical fires could produce, deepening the mystery of Drukgyal Dzong even further. So what exactly was Drukgyal Dzong built for? The deeper researchers dig, the further the answer seems to slip away. Countless theories have been proposed, yet each only thickens the mystery. Some scholars believe the fortress was never intended for warfare, but served as a ritual observation site, since its entire layout aligns precisely with Mount Jomolhari, the sacred peak, regarded as the dwelling place of Himalayan deities. Others focus on its unusually complex ventilation and smoke escape system, suggesting it may once have functioned as a secret communication station, designed to conceal signals, light, and movement within the structure from any outside observer. But regardless of religion, astronomy, or warfare, the biggest question remains the location itself. Why here a place that even today, with modern roads and vehicles, is difficult to reach? A place where fog erases visibility. A place on steep slopes, prone to landslides and snow hazards. A place with no clear strategic advantage, no resources, and no connection to trade routes. This very question has turned Drukgyal Dzong into one of the greatest enigmas of the Himalayas. It remains baffling why the ancients chose such a harsh, dangerous, and disadvantageous location instead of building on lower, safer, and far more defensible ground. This unreasonable choice has led many researchers to believe the structure did not serve any ordinary human purpose. It may have been tied to something beyond military or religious logic, an intention lost to time, or perhaps never revealed at all. One of the boldest theories about Drukgyal Dzong suggests that its location sits directly upon a sacred energy line in Himalayan spiritual tradition, a point where the physical world and the realm of deities intersect. If true, the fortress may have served as a kind of ritual gateway, marking the convergence of two planes of existence. Other scholars believe it once protected a holy object or a long-lost secret that ancient people intentionally concealed from all eyes. But the most controversial idea argues that Drukgyal Dzong was not built for humans at all, but for other beings, supernatural forces that ancient Bhutanese believed they must honor, serve, or safeguard at any cost. This is the theory that makes Drukgyal Dzong feel both sacred and unsettling, a mystery that refuses to be fully decoded. This is what draws people to the ruins. Its existence makes no sense fitting none of the usual historical models. Trees grow through collapsed walls, corners remain standing, despite centuries of harsh weather, all wrapped in drifting mist, as if deliberately hiding something. Today, when visitors reach Drukgyal Dzong, many pause for a long time before the sight of the fortress flickering in and out of the clouds. It feels as though it was never meant to be seen, but meant to remain concealed, revealing itself only to those who truly seek it, like a message from the past, traveling through centuries of mist. And it is this single question, why build in a place not meant for humans, that makes Drukgyal Dzong one of the most mysterious ancient sites in the world. Perhaps the answer still lies somewhere beneath the cold stone, or perhaps it has drifted away with the mountain fog forever. Until it is uncovered, this fortress in the clouds will continue to captivate anyone searching for truth within humanity's forgotten ruins. The maroon communities, formed by enslaved people who escaped into the Americas, have long been one of the most mysterious chapters in human history. They not only fled from the massive oppressive system of European colonial powers, but also built fully independent societies deep within forests, mountains, and rugged cliffs. What is strange is this: they appeared like shadows, resisted Western empires, defeated armies equipped with firearms, then vanished into the wilderness without leaving clear ruins, written records, or major traces like other civilizations. They lived, survived, evolved, fought, and continued their society for centuries in silence and mystery. How do you think the maroon communities managed to survive for centuries while leaving almost no trace behind? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The story of the maroon communities began with escapes from plantations. But what puzzles archaeologists and anthropologists is their extraordinary survival ability. Cut off from the civilized world, they still developed a balanced way of living with the rainforest, knowing every poisonous plant, medicinal herb, and healing remedy, hunting without leaving sound, and building shelters on mountaintops within forest gaps or behind dense vegetation where outsiders could hardly detect them. They learned to listen to the wind, through leaves read animal tracks, and identify safe paths simply from the direction moss grew on trees. These skills created a refined survival strategy that no one today can fully replicate. The maroon communication system is one of the greatest mysteries behind their survival. Without writing, they created a network of signals, using jungle drums, conch shells, echoing calls, and even tiny markers like a folded leaf or a slightly shifted stone. Each sound carried its own rhythm and resonance, conveying warnings, weather changes, or the movement of colonial forces. Strangely, many of these signals remain partially undeciphered, suggesting a level of complexity far beyond expectations. Through this system, the entire rainforest became a living map, allowing the Maroons to move far faster than European troops and turning every pathway into an advantage that belonged almost exclusively to them. The weapons of the Maroon people were primitive yet astonishingly effective. They never confronted enemies head-on. Instead, they turned the rainforest itself into an ally. Poison-tipped arrows made from local herbs, sharpened wooden spears, and cleverly hidden jungle traps made European soldiers feel as if they were fighting ghosts. The Maroons struck quickly, then vanished, reappearing from unexpected directions within moments, using terrain and vegetation to conceal every movement. The mystery deepens as many of the toxins they used remain unidentified, since the tropical forest holds countless plant species, still unclassified evidence of their ecological knowledge far surpassing their era. Anthropologists are astonished that maroon societies remained stable for centuries without written laws. Everything rested on oral tradition, spiritual rituals, family structures, and councils of elders. Their rituals blended West African beliefs, indigenous traditions, and remnants of Catholicism, forming a unique spiritual system with many elements still not fully understood. These ceremonies helped maintain unity, protect identity, and pass down survival knowledge through generations. Their architecture is another mystery. Many maroon settlements were discovered more than 200 years after abandonment. They were located in nearly inaccessible places, deep ravines behind thorn-filled forests, on mountain peaks with panoramic visibility, or along hidden water veins underground. Some can only be found by aerial survey or infrared imaging. Strangely, despite living for centuries, they did not leave large buildings like other ancient cultures. Everything was minimalistic and blended into nature. When they left, the rainforest needed only a few rainy seasons to erase all traces. The greatest mystery, and the one that astonishes researchers the most, is this question: how did they exist almost without a trace? A community lived for centuries, with culture, architecture, medicine, warfare, and spirituality. Yet when we look back, history only shows fragments. Why did they leave no stone monuments, no major settlements, no large-scale metal artifacts? Did they deliberately follow a principle of exist without footprints? Or did rainforest conditions erase all human traces within decades? Or did they believe safety only comes when humans fully merge with nature? The invisible society hypothesis suggests that the Maroons deliberately lived by a principle of leaving no trace as their highest survival strategy. Every shelter was designed to be dismantled quickly, every footpath could be erased, and every movement was kept in absolute secrecy so colonial forces could not track them. But beyond strategy, many scholars believe this mindset arose from their spiritual worldview. The forest was their birthplace, their protector, and ultimately the force that would reclaim everything once its purpose was fulfilled. They did not build to endure. They lived to dissolve back into nature, existing powerfully without leaving a visible footprint. Although Maroon communities still survive in Suriname, Jamaica, Brazil, and Colombia, the oldest layers of their knowledge have faded over time. The remaining groups preserve only fragments of their original culture, while many of the skills that once ensured their ancestors' survival, forest signaling, systems poison-making techniques, spiritual rituals, and herbal wisdom are gradually disappearing. As the last elders pass away, this unrecorded, orally transmitted knowledge vanishes with them, like a vast living library being sealed forever, leaving the world to speculate about what once existed. The combination of advanced survival strategy, mysterious herbal knowledge, a lifestyle intertwined with nature, and the near absence of archaeological traces has made the Maroon communities one of history's hardest enigmas. They were not a massive civilization like the Maya or Inca, yet their ability to resist colonial powers, maintain independence deep within the rainforest for centuries, and vanish without leaving evidence, is what makes scholars call them the ghosts of the tropical forest. Hidden deep within the eternally mist-covered mountains of northeast India, where every footstep seems to echo from a long-lost era, lies a mystery the world has almost never spoken of: the Nagaland megaliths. In the heart of an uninhabited forest, colossal stone slabs rise from the earth as if someone placed them there on purpose, hoping to send a message. Yet no recipient ever arrived. No inscriptions, no legends, no trace of any living culture that could claim them. They stand silent, cold, and ancient witnesses of a civilization so thoroughly erased that not a single community today dares to call them their ancestors. These stones are not mere ruins, they are unanswered questions carved into the land itself. And the deeper you venture into this forgotten world, the clearer one truth becomes. Someone was here long before the Naga people, and they left behind something no one can explain. So what do you think, who could have built these stones, and why? Share your theory in the comments below. Stepping into the hill regions where the Naga tribes live feels like slipping out of the timeline of the modern world. The air is strangely still, and within that silence, the megaliths emerge like forgotten fragments of an ancient memory. They do not form ceremonial circles like Stonehenge, nor follow any familiar order or pattern. Instead, they lie scattered in mysterious clusters on steep mountain slopes, lonely ridges, or deep within forests where human footsteps seem absent for centuries. What confounds archaeologists most is the complete cultural break. Although the Naga people preserve many ancient rituals, none of these stones belong to their living traditions, as if they were created by an entirely different culture, long swallowed by time. The stone slabs of Nagaland are not only massive, but were erected in ways that astonish archaeologists. Many stand 2 to 3 meters tall, weighing several tons, yet they are placed upright and stable on rugged sloping terrain with almost no natural support. There are no traces of ancient metal tools, no machine-cut marks, and no traditional accounts describing how such enormous stones were transported through dense jungle. At several sites, long grooves along the stone surfaces suggest the use of ropes, levers, or some specialized mechanism to lift them. These clues imply that the ancient builders possessed construction techniques far more advanced than what we typically associate with tribal societies, as if they once held a system of knowledge that has now vanished completely. The carvings on the Nagaland stone slabs deepen the mystery even further. Some stones bear repeating geometric patterns, while others display long, incised lines resembling directional markers, boundary signs, or ritual symbols. Yet when compared with the entire body of Naga iconography, none of these motifs match or show any meaningful similarity. This belonging to no one has led many scholars to believe they may be remnants of a pre-Naga community, an ancient group that vanished completely, leaving only these stone pillars as their final message. The locations of many Nagaland megaliths make the mystery even harder to unravel. Some slabs stand along what seem to be ancient pathways, as if people once traveled through these areas, yet most appear isolated, deep within forests so dense they are nearly inaccessible today. Several stones were erected on steep mountain slopes, where no one would logically hold rituals or gather as a community. If they served initiation ceremonies, why place them so far from settlements? If they marked territorial boundaries, why position them where no meetings or negotiations could reasonably occur? Even more puzzling, only a few clusters align with the winter solstice sunrise, while many others show no astronomical relationship at all. This inconsistency has led researchers to believe their placement did not follow a single unified system, but rather reflects purposes that time has completely erased. This lack of uniformity forms a scientific shadow that is hard to dispel. Unlike other megalithic cultures, where recurring patterns hint at purpose, Nagaland presents a network of disjointed, diverse, and non-standard structures. Some stones stand in long rows, like ancient pathways. Others stand alone on mountain tops. Some cluster together like altars. Others lean awkwardly, as if construction was abandoned midway. All of this creates a picture that is both complex and ambiguous, suggesting these structures may not belong to a single culture, but to many groups over many generations, each modifying, adding to, or repurposing the stones left by earlier unknown builders. To this day, numerous explanations have been proposed: ritual sites, victory markers, territorial boundaries, ancestral memorials, but none of them can explain the entire system. And this brings us to the most compelling part of the mystery. What makes the Nagaland megaliths one of the most perplexing mysteries in Asia is the question no one has ever been able to answer: who built them, and what was their true purpose? To begin with, there are no historical records, no ancient texts, and no consistent oral traditions that mention the origin of these stone monuments. Generations of modern Naga people, despite preserving many ancient customs and taking pride in their warrior heritage, openly admit that they were not the ones who built most of these megaliths. In their understanding, the stones belong to those who came before us, but not to our direct ancestors. That simple statement reveals a profound chasm in cultural continuity, a void in collective memory that modern science has yet to fill. From this silence, numerous theories have emerged. Some archaeologists believe the oldest structures may belong to a pre-Naga culture, an early community that inhabited the hills before the arrival of the Naga people. This culture may have vanished completely due to disease migration or assimilation into later societies, leaving behind nothing but these solitary stones standing in the forest. Another theory suggests they could have been part of a ritual system belonging to an extinct community, one that possessed astronomical knowledge, spiritual practices, and engineering skills far more complex than expected from tribal groups of that era. A bolder hypothesis proposes that the megaliths may have been farewell markers of a disappearing civilization, stone pillars, raised as final messages before they abandoned the region due to some unknown upheaval, climate change, intertribal conflict, or the collapse of an older belief system. In this interpretation, each stone is like a letter carved in rock, the last testimony of a people choosing to erase themselves from history. Conversely, some anthropologists argue that these stones were neither territorial markers nor ritual platforms, but perhaps a form of communication with deities or celestial forces, a sacred language we no longer possess the keys to decipher. The unusual carvings, long grooves, inconsistent alignments, and their placement in places almost uninhabitable for humans may all be fragments of a ceremonial system now entirely lost. Regardless of which theory one leans toward, one fact is undeniable. The Nagaland megaliths do not belong to any culture that still exists. They are echoes of an unnamed era, an age without a recorded identity, without a written history, and one that may never be fully understood. Until a groundbreaking archaeological discovery emerges, their mystery will continue to stand silently within the forest, waiting for someone brave enough to ask the same question generations before us could not answer. Who built them, and why choose places where humans could barely survive? Hidden deep beneath the ghostly mineral-rich waters of Lake Van lies a structure so impossible, so out of place, that archaeologists still struggle to accept it's real. Massive basalt walls, towering nearly 4 meters high and stretching farther than the eye can follow, rise from the lake bed like the remains of a drowned kingdom. No records mention it, no civilization ever claimed it, and yet it stands there silent and intact, as if guarding a secret deliberately buried for 3,000 years. This is the Lake Van underwater castle, an enigma that defies history, challenges geology, and whispers of a forgotten past, waiting to surface. Who do you think built this mysterious underwater fortress in Lake Van, and for what purpose? Share your thoughts in the comments below. What astonishes archaeologists the most is how the fortress remains almost perfectly intact, despite lying within Lake Van, a highly alkaline environment, strong enough to erode basalt over time. The lake's water not only corrodes, but also triggers harsh chemical reactions that should have destroyed any ancient structure. Yet the walls still stand, and the stone blocks remain solid, as if protected by a mechanism science has yet to understand. This inexplicable durability forces researchers to ask, What techniques did ancient builders use to help the structure survive for thousands of years in an environment that should have killed it? The architecture of the stone walls bears clear traces of the Eurasian kingdom, a powerful civilization that once dominated the Lake Van region around 3,000 years ago. They were renowned for their solid construction techniques, typically choosing mountain peaks, dry cliffs, or strategic, easily defensible positions to build their fortresses. Yet no historical Eurasian texts mention constructing anything underwater or even directly beside the lake's edge. This makes the existence of the submerged fortress strangely contradictory. If it truly was built by the Eurasians, why would they choose a location completely opposite to their military philosophy, a place with limited visibility, weak defensive lines, and utterly unsuitable for warfare? Or does this imply that the structure may not have belonged to them in the first place? Underwater surveys reveal that this structure is far more than a simple wall section. It is an entire architectural complex spread across the lake bed. Divers found multiple overlapping wall layers, traces of submerged chambers, and foundations of areas that may once have been living spaces or ceremonial zones. Even more astonishing, near the fortress, they discovered an ancient burial ground, a stone column carved with strange symbols, and a lion statue in classic Eurasian style. The simultaneous presence of a fortress, a burial site, and ritual symbols in a single location is extremely rare in Eurasian culture, suggesting that this place once held a uniquely important role, perhaps far beyond ordinary military purposes. Yet all Eurasian historical texts are silent. Not a single line mentions a sunken fortress, a water-related ritual, or a lakeside stronghold. This silence is more mysterious than the structure itself. Some geologists believe that the water level of Lake Van fluctuated dramatically over thousands of years, raising the possibility that the fortress originally stood on dry land and was gradually submerged as the lake rose. However, this hypothesis raises several difficult questions. If the water indeed rose in distinct stages, why are there no surrounding layers of walls, terraces, or architectural traces corresponding to those different water levels? Moreover, the current arrangement of the walls is extremely fixed, aligned, and sturdy, as if they were intentionally built to remain exactly where they are, even in a submerged environment. This has led researchers to question whether natural submersion is truly the complete explanation. Some of the stone blocks in the fortress bear marks that look nothing like natural water erosion, but instead resemble deliberate chiseling, dismantling, or reuse by humans. This has led archaeologists to suspect that the structure did not exist within a single historical phase, but may have been reused multiple times by different cultures. From here emerges the second hypothesis: could the fortress have been intentionally built near the water or even partially submerged to serve some kind of special ritual purpose? However, this idea conflicts with Eurasian traditions, as they had no known religious practices that involved constructing sacred structures in submerged environments. Furthermore, the fortress clearly exhibits military architecture vertical walls, segments resembling archer platforms or watchtower bases, indicating a defensive purpose rather than ceremonial. The third hypothesis, and also the boldest, suggests that the underwater fortress in Lake Van may be far older than the Eurasian kingdom itself. Some experts have noted that many of the stone blocks in the structure do not conform to any known Eurasian construction techniques, from the way the stones are fitted to the degree of polishing to the scale of each block. These inconsistencies hint that the fortress may have been rebuilt multiple times upon the foundations of an even older structure, one belonging to a civilization completely absent from modern historical records. If this hypothesis is correct, the Lake Van underwater castle could be a crucial missing piece that opens up an entirely lost chapter of history in the Caucasus-Anatolia region. But regardless of who built it, the biggest question remains unchanged. Why build a fortress underwater? This is the central mystery one that archaeologists, geologists, and historians have all failed to answer. If the fortress was once on dry land, why is it now so deep, so intact, and lacking the sliding patterns typical of naturally submerged structures? If it was built for ritual purposes, what kind of ritual would require such a massive military complex? And if it belonged to a civilization older than Urartu, why have no other objects or records from that culture been found around Lake Van? Lake Van continues to guard its secrets. A blanket of microorganisms covers the stone walls, giving them a strange blue-gray hue and the appearance of a ghost city suspended between rock and water. Divers, despite hundreds of hours of exploration, have only touched a small portion of the structure. Much of it lies deeper, darker, and far more difficult to access. And the more we explore, the greater the mystery grows. No one knows who built it. No one knows why it lies underwater. No one knows the true purpose of such an enormous structure. And perhaps it is Lake Van's silence, vast, still, alkaline, and nearly currentless, that has preserved this secret for 3,000 years. To this day, the greatest question remains unanswered. Why did ancient people build a fortress underwater? Did they know something we do not? Or is this simply the remnant of a completely forgotten chapter of human history? Only when Lake Van reveals its secrets will humanity finally learn the truth. The Ilara Valley rock churches lie deep inside a steep canyon in Cappadocia, a natural fissure that seems lifeless at first glance, but actually contains an entirely different world, a holy city carved directly into volcanic rock. Seen from above, the valley looks like an ancient road, violently ripped open across the earth. But this land is far from barren. Inside the towering cliffs, some rising dozens of meters, lie over 100 churches, hermit dwellings, and winding tunnels, all hollowed out by ancient hands with a technique that still confounds archaeologists. The strangest part is this: there is no document that records who the very first community was that transformed this valley into such a massive religious complex. These stone churches stand as proof of a time when craftsmanship far exceeded what mainstream history acknowledges. Who do you think were the very first people to turn the entire Ilara Valley into a holy city carved into the rock? Share your thoughts in the comments below. As you enter the Ilara Valley, the first thing that overwhelms any visitor is the sheer number of churches hidden deep within its vertical cliffs. More than 100 have been documented, yet the real number could be far greater, as many entrances have collapsed under landslides or lie buried in sections of the valley never explored. Some local residents even believe the entire canyon is an interconnected network of churches, monasteries, and secret tunnels stretching for kilometers, forming a massive religious labyrinth. What makes it even more intriguing is the striking diversity of these structures. Some are tiny recesses, meant for only a few kneeling worshippers, while others are grand halls with intricately carved domes. In certain areas, multiple levels of sanctuaries rise on top of each other, connected by winding stone stairways. Such complexity suggests that this was not merely a place of seclusion, but once a vast religious center, far beyond what we can imagine. As you move deeper into the churches of the Ilara Valley, it's impossible not to be stunned by the frescoes that remain vivid after more than a millennium. The reds, yellows, and blues are still so vibrant, it seems unbelievable, as if they were painted only a few decades ago, completely at odds with the damp, cold climate and harsh conditions inside the rock chambers. Even more mysterious is their technique. Some frescoes follow the familiar Byzantine style, yet many others display lines, color palettes, and saintly facial features unlike any artistic tradition ever recorded in Anatolia. Strange geometric borders, symbols reminiscent of pre-Christian belief systems, and a level of refinement far ahead of their time have led scholars to ask whether these frescoes are merely the final layer painted over an even older system of sacred symbols. And if that is true, then the Ilara Valley may once have been a holy sanctuary belonging to a vanished culture long before history had the chance to record it. As you venture deeper into the Ilara Valley, the hidden tunnels carved into the rock become truly perplexing. They are not merely passageways linking the churches. Many twist and turn for dozens of meters, leading from one sanctuary to an entirely different chamber, almost like extensions of Cappadocia's famous underground cities, such as Derinkuyu or Kaymakli. Their size shifts abruptly. Some sections are wide enough for groups to walk through, while others narrow so drastically that only a single person can squeeze through while crouching. Their true purpose remains unknown. Some theories suggest they were escape routes. Others believe the monks used them as discrete paths between meditation chambers. Yet the boldest theory of all claims these tunnels are remnants of a much older network, created by a community that existed long before the Byzantines, a community whose name history never recorded. When you step into the deep sanctuaries carved inside the rocks of the Ilara Valley, you immediately notice something strange. The acoustics are completely unlike anything outside. Standing at the exact center of certain chambers, your voice suddenly becomes unnaturally powerful, as if amplified beneath a massive stone dome. But in other churches, the sound fractures into multiple layers, creating the eerie sensation of an invisible choir answering your every whisper. Researchers refer to this as a form of primitive acoustic engineering, a technique considered nearly impossible to achieve using only the crude stone-carving tools of the medieval era. What deepens the mystery is that there is no indication the builders ever studied acoustics deliberately. No diagrams, no written descriptions, no evidence of experimentation. If this phenomenon was not accidental, and the precision of the acoustics makes coincidence highly unlikely, then the builders must have possessed knowledge far ahead of their time about how sound behaves within solid stone spaces. This raises the question, where did they learn such a technique, and why does it appear only in certain churches within the Ilara Valley? Many carvings inside the churches fuel further debate. Some depict enormous single eyes, interlocking circles, or unusual cross shapes that resemble neither Roman Greek nor Armenian forms. Several symbols do not belong to any recognized branch of early Christianity. This implies that the valley may once have been a multi-layered spiritual center, or that the builders belonged to a community that blended indigenous beliefs with emerging Christian traditions. Yet once again, no written sources mention such a community. Perhaps the most puzzling aspect is history's silence. A valley holding hundreds of religious structures, richly decorated and architecturally advanced, should have been frequently mentioned in Byzantine writings. But in reality, only a few vague notes describe hermits living in the larger Cappadocia region. There is no list of monasteries, no names of monks, no accounts of rituals. It is as if the valley was intentionally hidden or belonged to a community that chose to leave no trace in written history. And finally, the question that makes Ilara Valley one of Cappadocia's greatest archaeological enigmas: who carved this entire valley into a holy city? Many clues suggest the churches were not the original structures. Some chambers show wear patterns older than the Christian frescoes. The tunnels are dated by some researchers as far older than the Byzantine period of the 11th century. Comparisons between the Ilara tunnels and the layout of Derinkuyu, believed to date back to the Bronze Age, or even earlier, raise a bold hypothesis: the Byzantines may have simply repurposed an ancient cave system built by a forgotten civilization. That civilization vanished before history could record it, leaving behind deep tunnels, chamber-like sanctuaries, and a primitive religious architecture later transformed into Christian worship spaces. If true, then the Ilara Valley rock churches are not just sacred Christian landmarks, they are the last surviving echoes of a prehistoric culture swallowed by time. Who first arrived here? Why did they choose such a perilous valley for their sacred complex? And why did nearly all traces of their existence disappear? These questions form the core of the valley's greatest mystery, the one that draws thousands of visitors and researchers each year, hoping to hear the silent stories embedded in these stone walls for millennia. Hidden deep within one of North America's oldest temperate rainforests, where the air hangs thick like eternal mist, and sunlight survives only as faint fragments slipping through layers of ancient leaves, lies a mystery science has never been able to explain. Among towering trees draped in moss, like the skin of some prehistoric creature, ancient carvings emerge without warning. Silent, patternless, and unlike anything in known indigenous tradition. They feel like messages left behind by a forgotten culture, something that slipped into the very heart of the Hoh forest, marked its presence, and then vanished forever. And in this place where humans were never meant to walk, the enigma of the Hoh rainforest, ancient carvings, begins to reveal itself. What do you think left these carvings deep inside the Hoh forest, and why they share your thoughts in the comments below? The carvings in the Hoh forest have long puzzled researchers because they bear no resemblance to any known indigenous carving style. On rotting logs, moss-covered rock faces, and even decaying stumps, people have found an array of strange shapes. Double spirals, reminiscent of European megalithic symbols, eyeless humanoid figures that evoke unease, circular motifs resembling solar eclipses, elongated strokes like the tail of a comet, and even map-like patterns of river flows that do not exist. This diversity goes far beyond the visual language of the Quinault or Hoh peoples, raising an ever larger question: to which culture do these symbols belong, and why are they completely unlike anything else found in this region? One of the most perplexing aspects for researchers is the placement of many carvings. They do not appear in convenient or accessible spots, but instead on leaning tree trunks, 2 to 4 meters above the ground, on slick rock ledges coated with lichen, or hidden deep within dark crevices where sunlight can barely reach. These are not locations where any ordinary person would choose to do anything, let alone carve intricate shapes into decaying wood or moss-covered stone. The deliberate choice to carve in such dangerous, dim, and seemingly pointless places makes common theories like trail markers, ritual practices, or folk art progressively harder to believe. Many researchers have begun asking, why did ancient people choose these impossible locations, and what compelled them to carve there instead of anywhere else in the forest? The most astonishing detail is that many of the carvings appear far older than any historical record from the region. Some are estimated to be 600 to 1,000 years old, and a few even lie on partially petrified logs. This suggests they may have been created at a time when there is no evidence that humans ever lived this deep inside the Hoh forest. This chronological mismatch is exactly what makes the mystery even harder to explain. Throughout all surveys, no evidence of habitation has been found. No hearths, no tools, no structural remains, no animal bones, no worn paths, no repeated ritual motifs. Everything suggests the creators came briefly, carved something, and vanished without leaving any trace of life. When researchers plotted the locations of each carving on a map, they discovered something eerily strange. The markings aligned almost perfectly into a straight line, stretching nearly 2 kilometers through the forest. No curves, no deviations, no random scattering like natural traces usually show. It resembled a deliberate sacred axis, as if ancient people were following a secret pathway known only to them. No one knows whether it was a pilgrimage route, an ancient boundary, a navigational map, or a form of celestial alignment similar to other mysterious structures around the world. This unexpected precision leaves scholars even more bewildered. Who would have a purpose great enough to create such a long, intentional line deep within the wilderness? Several carvings in the Hoh forest display forms that leave researchers astonished: circles surrounding a dark core resembling a total solar eclipse, elongated strokes like the tail of a comet, and clusters of small dots arranged as if depicting the movement of an object across the sky. What puzzles scholars is that this region is not known for any significant astronomical events. So what extraordinary phenomenon did ancient people witness that compelled them to carve it into the landscape, and why choose to record it in the most remote, inaccessible depths of the forest? One of the strangest phenomena surrounding the carvings in the Hoh Forest is the way they appear and vanish with the seasons, as if the forest itself decides when humans are allowed to glimpse its secrets. High humidity softens the wood, while moss and lichen rapidly cover the surfaces, making the carvings disappear completely from sight. Yet after a strong wind or a few dry weeks, the decayed bark peels away, revealing symbols once thought lost forever. Many carvings documented in the 1970s have now vanished without a trace, while nearby logs, previously unremarkable, suddenly reveal new patterns. This unpredictable shifting leads researchers to wonder, have we truly seen everything, or only the visible tip of a mystery that keeps changing with every breath of the forest? Determining the true age of the carvings is almost an impossible task. The decayed wood and partial petrification make carbon-14 dating nearly unreliable. Researchers are forced to rely on tree ring patterns and surrounding sediment layers, yet both methods carry large margins of error. Each measurement points to a different time frame, pushing every conclusion into disagreement and driving the mystery even deeper. The greatest mystery surrounding the carvings of the Hoh Forest does not lie in their strange shapes or their difficult-to-determine ages, but in a deceptively simple question that remains completely unanswered: who created them, and why do these markings appear only in the deepest, wettest, and most inaccessible parts of the forest? If they were the work of the ancient Kinol or Hoh peoples, they clearly had countless more practical places to carve near riverbanks, where they fished near forest-edge settlements or on low, dry logs that required no effort to reach. Yet not a single carving has ever been found in those logical areas. Instead, they cluster in places that even modern researchers struggle to access, forcing them to crawl through thick moss-deep mud and almost non-existent pathways. This irrational placement has led some to propose that the carvings were made by a hidden fleeing group trying to avoid being discovered, deliberately choosing difficult spots so their traces would remain concealed. But this theory collapses quickly, because such a group would undoubtedly have left signs of daily life: hearths, tools, refuse, or any form of habitation, yet nothing of the sort exists. More daring theories suggest they may be the legacy of a pre-indigenous culture that once passed through the forest along a ritual route, carving symbols at places they believed sacred before disappearing without leaving cultural footprints behind. Some modern anthropologists offer an entirely different perspective. The carvings might not have been created to be seen, but to be placed precisely marking an energy line, a special zone beneath the forest floor, or some kind of celestial alignment. A few markings even resemble miniature topographic maps, yet depict waterways that no longer exist, perhaps remnants of an ancient landscape lost to time. What deepens the mystery further is that no theory is supported by evidence. No culture claims them. No oral tradition mentions them. No written record describes them. They stand in silence, hidden deep in the forest, like messages from someone history has deliberately erased, leaving us with a lingering question: are we truly looking at human traces, or something else entirely? The only certainty is this: no one has explained why these strange carvings exist, solely in places humans were never meant to walk, deep within the dark, wet heart of the Hoh Forest, where sunlight never reaches the ground. This illogic, this isolation, this silence of history is what makes the Hoh Rainforest ancient carvings one of the most perplexing archaeological mysteries in North America, a story smothered in moss, revealed only when the wood decays, then swallowed back into darkness as if protecting its own secret. When speaking of the most enigmatic civilizations of South America, people usually think of Moche or the Inca. Yet long before these great cultures rose to prominence, there existed a little-known civilization that created one of the most perplexing symbolic systems ever found, the Kupiznik. Emerging nearly 1,000 years before Chavin, they left behind very few structures and almost no written language. But among the surviving ceramics, ritual vessels, and carved figures, one motif appears again and again. Serpents, not natural snakes, but supernatural beings with elongated bean-shaped eyes, spiraling bodies, sometimes double heads or multiple heads, rendered with a divine presence. These Kupiznik serpent symbols have become one of Peru's most enduring archaeological mysteries. Why do you think the Kupiznik chose the serpent as their most sacred symbol? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The serpent imagery of the Kupiznik does not imitate any natural creature. Instead, it is deliberately distorted in almost metaphysical ways. The fangs are exaggerated beyond realism. The heads are layered like multiple tiers of consciousness, and the bodies are divided into repeating geometric segments that resemble visual codes. Their narrow, slit-like eyes give these beings the appearance of entities from another realm. This deliberate distortion suggests that the Kupiznik were not simply depicting snakes, they were encoding an invisible power, treating the serpent as an intermediary between humans and the supernatural forces they worshipped. What stands out is that these serpent symbols are almost always found in ritual contexts, especially those involving transitions between life and death. Many serpent vessels were buried in tombs, others found in ceremonial spaces, while some were burned or intentionally broken before burial, evidence of complex rites. The Kupiznik clearly saw serpents beings linked to both the living world and the underworld, places where the soul travels after death. The shedding of a snake's skin, symbolic of rebirth and renewal, was likely a powerful metaphor for them. The most distinctive aspect of Kupiznik art lies in how they transform the serpent into a deeply symbolic geometric system. Zigzag lines express a kind of divine motion. Diamond-shaped eyes suggest the watchfulness of supernatural beings, and double spirals evoke the endless cycles of life and the universe. Most striking is the frequent appearance of the double serpent motif, two heads, two parallel bodies, or two intertwined snakes, leading scholars to suspect this was not mere decoration, but a form of religious code understood only by the Kupiznik elite. It may have symbolized duality, two realms of existence, or even twin deities who coexist and balance each other in their worldview. The connection between Kupiznik and Chavin adds further intrigue. Although Kupiznik predates Chavin by centuries, both cultures share remarkably similar serpent imagery, the same elongated eyes, the same coiling bodies, the same pronounced fangs. Many scholars suspect Kupiznik is the artistic and religious foundation that shaped northern Andean cosmology. But how could a small, scattered civilization exert such sweeping influence? Were they once a major religious center? Or did their shamans travel widely, spreading serpent symbolism across the Andes? Another strange aspect, serpents frequently appear fused with human figures. Some ceramics depict humans wearing serpent headdresses, humans with serpent tongues, or humans with snake-like eyes. This suggests rituals of transformation, a form of shamanism in which individuals embody the serpent to communicate with higher forces. For Kupiznik people, the serpent was not a threat, but a bridge between worlds, representing wisdom, hidden power, and spiritual travel accessible only to the initiated. Many serpent artifacts show signs of deliberate destruction, cracks, burn marks, or burial in wet soil. This has led researchers to theorize that the Kupiznik viewed serpents not just as symbols, but as entities that had to be activated through sacred rites. Breaking a vessel may have symbolized the release of its spiritual energy. In this worldview, the serpent could be a doorway to divine realms, and destroying the artifact was the final step of the ritual. Across all Kupis art, no motif is as controversial or puzzling as the double serpent symbol. It is far more than a repeated decorative element. It is almost a cultural signature, a defining mark of the civilization, and a motif that no earlier Andean culture used in such a systematic way. The double serpent may represent duality, life and death, sky and earth, human and divine, but the absence of any written records leaves every theory in the realm of speculation. Strangely, the motif appears on all kinds of artifacts, everyday tools, ceremonial vessels, and even objects buried with the dead. This suggests the double serpent held profound spiritual importance for the Kupis, serving as a core symbol of their religious worldview. Yet why they chose this form, and what it truly meant, remains a mystery no one has been able to decode. All these observations lead to the central mystery, a question that a century of research has failed to answer. What role did the serpent play in Kupis religious thought? If the serpent was a protective deity, why is there no major temple dedicated to it? If the serpent was a spiritual guide, why is its imagery so complex, almost encrypted? If it symbolized the underworld or reincarnation, why depict it in such unnatural forms, elongated eyes, double heads, twisted bodies, as if concealing deeper meaning? And most importantly, why did the Kupis elevate the serpent above all other symbols, unlike neighboring cultures? Some scholars propose that the serpent was a mediator between humans and gods, a channel used by shamans to cross planes of existence. Others argue that it symbolized control over rain and agriculture, vital to a coastal society dependent on uncertain climate. Another theory suggests that serpents represented earthquake energy, as the Andes are earthquake-prone and serpentine motion mirrors seismic waves. Yet no theory is definitive. With no written language, Kupis serpent imagery remains a silent language. Everything we know comes from shapes, carvings, and ritual traces, but not a single explanation survives. This gives the serpent an almost mystical aura, a sacred code, guarded by priests lost forever when the civilization vanished. Today, the Kupis serpent symbols continue to challenge researchers. Serpents are a universal motif across cultures, yet the Kupis rendition is uniquely alien. Each line feels charged with metaphysical significance. Every diamond-shaped eye looks as though it peers through time. Every twisted body feels like a message left undeciphered. Perhaps the serpent was once a god. Perhaps it was a spiritual animal. Perhaps it was a secret religious code. But until new discoveries emerge, the serpent's true role in Kupis religious thought remains one of the greatest mysteries of the ancient Andes, a quiet enigma that refuses to fade. The Todja Gorge Sanctuary ruins are one of the strangest and most unexplainable ancient sites in the Todja Gorge of Morocco, where two vertical cliffs rising more than 300 meters close in to form a narrow crevice where sunlight reaches the ground for only a few short hours each day. The ruins sit wedged between these immense walls of stone, carrying too many contradictions if viewed through the lens of ancient survival engineering and religion. The location alone is incomprehensible to reach it. Modern visitors must cling to rough rock steps and scramble along dusty, windswept ledges. Yet thousands of years ago, someone decided to build a sanctuary in a place with no water, no living space, no transport access, and absolutely no suitability for any form of daily life. Who do you think had the determination and the reason to build a sanctuary in a place not meant for humans? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Archaeological analysis shows that this site was certainly not a temporary structure, but a sanctuary built with clear and deliberate intent. The stone platforms were polished to an impressive level of precision. The ritual niches were carved directly into solid limestone, and the straight, clean grooves reveal craftsmanship far beyond what we usually expect from ancient times. These details prove that the builders invested remarkable time, effort, and skill for a purpose that was anything but ordinary. It was not meant for living, not meant for daily use, but created for a hidden spiritual practice, a place accessible only to select individuals, where rituals once took place that we can no longer fully understand today. The system of platforms and small niches suggests fire ceremonies, offerings, or purification rituals. Some niches contain traces of burning, indicating the repeated use of sacred fire or ritual objects over a long period of time. Yet the strange part is, all of the platforms are positioned in places extremely difficult to reach, completely unsuitable for daily activities, but almost perfect for a ritual meant to be isolated from the world. Even stranger is the complete absence of everyday traces: no burials, no hearths, no pottery, no tools, no records. This place had no resident community, nor was it a temporary camp. It existed purely as a ritual site, a space people came to only when performing something exceptional. The carvings on the rock walls of the Todja Gorge Sanctuary are among its most perplexing mysteries. They do not form any written script, nor do they belong to any known religious symbol system in the region. Instead, they appear as straight, deliberate grooves and simple geometric shapes, carved with remarkable precision, suggesting a specific ritualistic or astronomical function. Upon closer examination, some of these grooves align perfectly with the rare moments when sunlight penetrates the gorge, almost as if the ancient builders calculated the sun's path so that the light would strike the stone platforms on one particular meaningful day of the year. This has led researchers to wonder, was this place a secret solar calendar, a shadowed observatory used to mark seasonal transitions, or perhaps a site for rituals connected to sacred light? Yet to this day, all of this remains speculation, because no one knows what these carvings truly signify or which culture created them in the first place. The strangest part is that the people of Todja Valley have absolutely no legends or memories connected to this sanctuary. No folktales, no ancestral stories, no historical hints. This complete silence makes the site's age unsettlingly obscure, as if it belonged to a culture that vanished long ago, long before the collective memory of this land ever took shape. Amid all the questions surrounding the Todja Gorge Sanctuary, the one that haunts archaeologists the most is the identity of the people who built it. To create perfectly flat stone platforms in such a treacherous gorge, they would have had to transport materials across vertical cliff faces, an almost impossible feat using only primitive tools. Polishing the limestone would have required scaffolding, yet strangely not a single trace of such structures remains. And to perform rituals in the near-permanent darkness of the gorge, they would have needed to survive in a cold, dry, oxygen-poor environment, completely isolated from the outside world. All these factors point to a deeper mystery. This could not have been the work of ordinary people, but of a group possessing skills, beliefs, and motivations vastly different from any ancient culture we currently understand. Everything points to impossibility. No recorded local culture ever had the need or the technology to build a sanctuary in such a place. Why did they not choose the wide valley below, where sunlight and water are abundant? Why choose a place so clearly not meant for humans? All theories surrounding the builders of the Todja Gorge Sanctuary seem to lead nowhere. Some believe they were hermits who sought absolute isolation to commune with the divine. Others suggest a secret sect forbidden from performing rituals among the public. A few scholars even proposed that they belonged to a lost culture, whose worldview was so different that the darkness and stillness of the gorge held sacred meaning. But if such a culture truly existed, why is there no trace of them anywhere else? This complete emptiness renders every theory fragile, as if the mystery of this place is deliberately resisting every attempt to explain it. The most unsettling fact is this: none of the theories are strong enough. The site is too remote, too inaccessible, too hard to construct to be the work of a small or spontaneous group. Every clue indicates a sanctuary built with intention, guided by a complex ritualistic philosophy, but no one knows whose philosophy it was. To this day, the Todja Gorge Sanctuary tertiary ruins stand isolated between two towering cliffs as a reminder that some ancient groups once existed, believed in things we no longer comprehend, and did things far beyond the explanations of modern archaeology. And the greatest unanswered question still lingers in the darkness of the gorge. Who built a sanctuary in a place nearly impossible to reach, and how did they get there? In the calm waters of the Gulf of Siam, where gentle waves are often seen as harmless and serene, lies a mystery. No one who has seen it can ever forget an ancient temple resting deep beneath the surface, isolated in the cold, dark seabed, belonging to no civilization ever recorded in the history of Southeast Asia. Locals refer to it by many names: the Temple of the Sunken Ones, the Forgotten Shrine, the Ancient Seagate. But all agree that the structure should not exist where it is. The first divers described the temple as a massive block of stone rising from the sea floor, its walls covered in barnacles and sea moss, yet still preserving edges so sharp it was as if they had been carved with metal tools far more advanced than anything ancient peoples in the region ever possessed. The deeper they explored, the more perplexing it became. The motifs resembled neither Khmer nor Srivijaya, nor any religious architectural tradition known in the histories of Thailand or Cambodia. The temple seemed to belong to another world entirely. In your opinion, what could explain the appearance of a temple that belongs to no known civilization beneath the Gulf of Siam? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The material used to build the submerged temple in the Gulf of Siam is one of its most perplexing features, so puzzling that archaeologists have begun to question everything they thought they knew about the region's history. The temple's blocks are made from a white, silica-rich stone containing crystalline structures similar to quartzite, yet with a mineral composition found nowhere around the Gulf, completely foreign to Southeast Asian geology. No nearby island coastline or mountain range contains this type of rock, making the question, how did it get here, almost impossible to answer. If ancient people transported it from afar, they must have possessed a maritime system far more advanced than anything currently understood. But if the stone was not transported, if this area was once land before sinking, then the temple's age may lie far beyond the entire historical timeline humanity has recorded, belonging to a period so ancient it left no trace in the archaeological record. This is precisely what makes the mystery of the temple deeper than any existing hypothesis. As archaeologists examined the temple's layout more closely, they discovered a detail that made the entire team stop in disbelief. The main pillars of the structure align on a perfectly straight axis stretching several meters across the sea floor, and that axis points precisely toward the location of the sunrise on the summer solstice. Such near-perfect accuracy cannot be accidental. It requires refined astronomical knowledge, long-term observation of celestial movements, and a measuring system far more advanced than anything ancient Southeast Asian civilizations are known to possess. No empire in the region, not the Khmer, not Srivijaya, not Dvaravati, demonstrated this level of architectural astronomy. This led to a controversial hypothesis. The builders of the temple may not have been local inhabitants at all, or they may have belonged to an entirely different era, one in which knowledge of the sky surpassed that of every civilization recorded in history. Further surveys deepened the mystery. There were no surrounding settlements, no auxiliary structures, no stone pathways, none of the elements typically found around an ancient temple. The structure stands entirely alone on the seafloor, with no signs it ever served as a population center or religious complex. Some divers described the sensation of approaching it as if nearing something placed there rather than constructed. The walls rise unnaturally straight, as if the entire building had been formed at once from a single massive block of material. There are no chisel marks, no tool traces, no evidence of manual construction. This has led researchers to ask whether we are confronting a long-lost construction technique, or perhaps a technology humanity no longer understands. Equally puzzling are the age measurements. When samples were tested using various isotopic methods, laboratory results fluctuated wildly. Some samples appeared only a few thousand years old, others tens of thousands. Repeated testing produced the same erratic results. Some geologists speculate that extreme heat exposure in the distant past or a burst of unknown energy might have altered the readings. This ties into another discovery. Compasses fail near the temple, spinning unpredictably, and magnetic sensors detect faint but stable electromagnetic pulses. No large metal deposits are present on the seabed. So what is generating these signals? Could the structure contain unusual mineral components or have once undergone a powerful energy event? Legends from southern Thai coastal communities add fuel to the mystery. They speak of an ancient city near the shore, wealthy and proud, which angered the gods and was drowned in a single night. Once dismissed as symbolic folklore, these stories now seem eerily plausible. Yet sea level models spanning the last 12,000 years show no catastrophic rise capable of submerging a structure to this depth, making the temple's origins even more perplexing. Even more confounding are the carvings within the temple. They depict creatures unlike any found in Southeast Asia's ecosystems: long fish with upright dorsal fins like spines, sea dragon-like beings with armored backs, and most strikingly, a bipedal figure with an elongated head and scaled body unrelated to Naga or any symbolic entity in local religions. This suggests the temple may belong to a belief system that no longer exists, or perhaps even to a human subspecies long vanished from the earth. Then comes the most important question, the one every diver, archaeologist, and researcher has attempted, yet failed to answer: who built this temple beneath the ocean, and what was their true purpose? It is not only the greatest mystery of the structure, but perhaps the greatest mystery of the entire Gulf of Siam. If the temple once stood on land before being submerged, its builders may have belonged to a prehistoric civilization that disappeared long ago, one with advanced astronomy, an understanding of energy, and stone carving techniques impossible to explain with stone or bronze tools. If this hypothesis is correct, the temple is a rare surviving relic of their world, preserved in the deep dark for tens of thousands of years, waiting for modern humans to rediscover it. If, however, the temple was built directly in its current underwater location using a technology that no longer exists, the mystery grows even deeper. This would imply a group, or perhaps an intelligent entity, capable of constructing underwater controlling sea levels, or building at a time when the Gulf of Siam looked nothing like it does today. Some believe it was an ancient astronomical observatory aligned to track a forgotten celestial event. Others think it was a shrine dedicated to oceanic deities or now extinct sea creatures. A few bold researchers propose that the structure may mark a boundary, a threshold between two worlds, between human eras and the age of another species. And then there is the most controversial theory, dismissed by many, yet strangely consistent with the temple's anomalies, that its builders did not belong to any known branch of human civilization. The foreign architectural motifs, the unfamiliar creatures carved into the walls, the unusual stone, the magnetic disturbances, all could be remnants of an off-grid civilization, a group that never integrated into human history, leaving behind only silent traces before disappearing without a sound. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain. The Gulf of Siam submerged temple is more than a structure lost beneath the waves. It is a reminder that human history may be far more complex, deeper, and broader than we have ever imagined. and beneath those still waters, the temple remains an unspoken guardian of an untold story, waiting for the day humanity becomes wise enough to uncover the true purpose of those who built it. At the edge of the Fayum Desert, where golden sand meets the dark waters of the Bahr Youssef Canal, lies one of the most enigmatic and perplexing structures ever known to humanity, the underground labyrinth of Hawara. Though only foundations and scattered stones remain today, ancient descriptions speak of a colossal monument beyond imagination. Herodotus, Strabo, and other Greek historians who once visited the site recorded astonishing accounts. They described Hawara as a sprawling labyrinth, larger than a pyramid, containing thousands of chambers and hallways woven together like an endless network. Strangely, the scale of what remains today is far smaller than these ancient accounts, and the mysterious gap between archaeological reality and ancient memory has turned Hawara into a puzzle that no one has truly solved. What do you think the Hawara labyrinth was truly built for? Protecting secrets, storing lost knowledge, or hiding something even greater? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Most ancient records agree that beneath the pyramid of Amenemhat III, the powerful pharaoh of the 12th dynasty, lies a vast underground level. It was not a simple burial chamber, but an intricate complex of rooms, gates, corridors, and layered structures, each area seemingly designed to mislead and protect. But over thousands of years, rising groundwater drowned the entire site under murky layers of water and silt, blocking all modern attempts at excavation. As a result, whatever lies beneath Hawara remains completely hidden from human eyes. Ground-penetrating radar surveys conducted throughout the 20th and 21st centuries revealed a startling discovery. Beneath what once seemed like meaningless layers of sediment lies a massive rectangular structure, its long parallel sections resembling the very successive great chambers described by Herodotus. Geological imaging suggests this is no natural formation, but very likely an enormous man-made space, unlike anything previously documented in Egyptian archaeology. However, the high groundwater level and unstable soil make deeper access completely impossible. We are left only with these faint signals, confronted by a wall of water that separates the present day from a secret buried for 3,000 years. Hawara's mystique also comes from descriptions mentioning thousands of rooms. Several texts speak of more than 3,000 chambers, divided between surface and subterranean levels, each serving a different purpose: royal archives, sacred texts, statues of gods, or ceremonial rituals. Yet most of these rooms have never been seen in modern times. The true spatial layout of Hawara remains hidden, as if the entire complex was intentionally erased from human reach. Many scholars believe that Hawara was designed as a perfect defensive system, where the architecture itself functioned as a weapon. Corridors were deliberately arranged in irregular patterns. False doors led only into darkness, and turns ended abruptly in sealed walls, forming a labyrinth in which any intruder would quickly lose their sense of direction. In that dense, suffocating darkness, only someone who truly understood the structure or possessed a secret map could advance without becoming trapped. This design suggests that the builders of Hawara were not merely protecting treasure or a burial chamber. They intended to ensure that whatever lay inside would never fall into the wrong hands. Yet this raises an even deeper mystery. Why build such an enormous labyrinth simply to guard a tomb? How important was the secret hidden within? Many researchers believe that Hawara may once have been the greatest repository of knowledge in ancient Egypt, a place where records humanity now desperately wishes to recover were preserved. Dynastic histories, astronomical maps, cosmic models, sacred writings, and the deepest philosophies of that civilization. If this is true, Hawara was not merely a labyrinth, but a national archive protected by secret rituals and an architectural complexity so great that outsiders could never reach its core. Imagine a stone encyclopedia built to endure for millennia, yet now buried completely beneath groundwater. The very silence surrounding it makes the mystery of Hawara even more haunting. Across all the layers of mystery surrounding Hawara, no question is more controversial or captivating than the one concerning the true purpose of this labyrinth. For more than a century, archaeologists, historians, and religious scholars have tried to decode it. Yet they all return to the same point. Every theory not only opens a new line of interpretation, but also shakes the foundations of how we understand ancient Egyptian civilization. If Hawara was indeed a royal tomb, why has no definitive evidence been found? A typical tomb does not require thousands of rooms, corridors arranged like traps, and a structure so complex that even eyewitnesses in antiquity admitted it surpassed the pyramids themselves. And more importantly, where is the mummy of Amenemhat III? If it was relocated long ago, then what justified the existence of such a colossal labyrinth? The second theory proposes that Hawara was a record-keeping center, a kind of national library of ancient Egypt. But if its purpose was to store archives, why design it as a maze, capable of confusing anyone who entered? This only makes sense if the information stored within was of the highest secrecy, requiring protection from all unpermitted eyes. Such a repository would demand absolute confidentiality, guarded through ritual architectural codes and religious authority. Other scholars view Hawara as a ritual center, a place where ceremonies relating to death, rebirth, and the afterlife were performed. According to this view, the labyrinth symbolized the soul's journey through darkness into light. But this remains pure speculation, as no surviving text describes any rituals carried out within the labyrinth. More boldly, some modern researchers see Hawara as a miniature model of the cosmos, each room representing a star, each corridor a fragment of the sky, and the entire structure serving as a spiritual map of ancient Egypt. If this interpretation is correct, Hawara is not merely architecture, it is philosophy, belief, and a monumental declaration of how the Egyptians understood the order of the universe. And finally, there is the most haunting theory: Hawara was built to hide something known only to priests and royalty. This could explain why the labyrinth contains no inscriptions, explaining its purpose. Silence itself was the method of protection. As the entire area became submerged over thousands of years, that secret may have been sealed even more tightly. Perhaps Hawara was never meant to guard the dead, but to guard something far more alive, knowledge, an object, or a truth the Egyptians did not want the world to discover. To this day, the question of Hawara remains open, like a doorway that has never allowed humanity to step through. And it is precisely this uncertainty that makes the mystery of the labyrinth's true purpose one of the greatest unsolved questions in the history of archaeology. What is especially strange is that ancient civilizations often recorded the purpose of their monumental structures. Egyptians left thousands of hieroglyphs describing rituals, beliefs, and royal histories, except at Hawara. Why would a structure described as greater than the pyramids leave no explanation of itself? This silence forms the very core of Hawara's greatest mystery, a mystery of its true meaning. And even today, with radar geological imaging and satellite data, we still stand outside the labyrinth, listening to faint echoes from a long-vanished world. If one day the groundwater recedes and humanity can finally step inside the underground labyrinth of Hawara, we may face one of the most monumental archaeological discoveries of the century: lost texts, religious secrets, dynastic records, ancient maps, perhaps something entirely unexpected that the Egyptians intentionally concealed for 3,000 years. But until that day comes, the underground labyrinth of Hawara remains a locked doorway, its purpose the last great unsolved secret of ancient Egypt. In the arid Sechura desert of Peru, where the ground cracks under relentless sunlight and cold winds sweep through an empty landscape, stands an ancient structure that continues to spark debate among archaeologists and astronomers alike: the stone towers of Chankilo. No inscriptions remain. No records survive to explain their purpose, yet 13 stone towers rise sharply along the horizon, like a deliberate challenge left for the people of the 21st century. Who built them? For what purpose? And why does their astronomical precision far exceed what we believe a civilization more than 23 centuries ago could have achieved? Who do you think truly built the 13 towers of Chankilo, and for what purpose? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Chankilo was not an ancient city, nor was it a permanent settlement. There are no traces of hearths, living spaces, or everyday tools typically found in other ancient Peruvian communities. Instead, Chankilo resembles a ceremonial complex, a site constructed with a clear purpose, yet offering no easy explanation. At its center lies a large fortress with thick walls and multiple entrances designed to control human movement. Surrounding it are auxiliary structures, and farther beyond stretch 13 stone towers, spanning more than 300 meters along the horizon. These towers hold the key to Chankilo's enigma and mark the beginning of one of the greatest archaeological debates in South America. From the moment researchers began studying it in the early 20th century, the 13 stone towers of Chankilo have puzzled archaeologists with their near-perfect precision. All the towers share similar dimensions, show no significant tilting, and together form a gentle arc that aligns exactly with the natural horizon of the Sechura Desert. As the sun rises and sets, its light moves across the towers in a steady, predictable sequence, functioning like time markers on a colossal open-air clock. After decades of observation and simulation, astronomers finally realized that this row of towers forms a complete solar calendar capable of pinpointing the sun's position on any given day of the year, a level of technical mastery far beyond what we once imagined for the civilization that created it. But the discovery immediately raised a larger question: who designed such a system? And more importantly, why did they build it? To grasp the sophistication of Chankilo, we must imagine how this system functioned like an open-air cosmic machine. 2 observation points, positioned to the north and south and separated by hundreds of meters, were aligned precisely toward the row of 13 stone towers. From these vantage points, ancient observers could track the sun rising or setting exactly between specific gaps of the towers on particular days of the year. During the winter solstice, the sun appeared next to the leftmost tower. During the summer solstice, it shifted to the rightmost one. On all other days, the sun moved gradually between the towers, as if walking along the horizon, a motion so steady and predictable that the entire structure operated like a colossal timekeeping device, where nature and architecture merged into a single rhythm. This is what stunned modern science. Chankilo's accuracy nearly matches modern astronomical calendars and is far more sophisticated than other ancient structures. While Stonehenge relies on broad alignments and large angular separations to estimate seasonal changes, Chankilo can determine every single day of the year through the sun's position. Whoever built it understood the solar cycle, knew how to measure its yearly movement, and most astonishing of all, managed to encode this knowledge into a massive structure that operates like a natural machine. A civilization thousands of years before the Inca achieved this. But why? Some researchers suggest Chankilo served agricultural needs because knowing the precise timing of rains, droughts, and planting seasons was vital in Peru's harsh environment. But this theory cannot explain the fortress and defensive walls. If the structure existed solely to track the sun, why was a heavily fortified complex necessary? And why restrict access so strictly that the site resembles a military installation? Others propose Chankilo was a religious center, a place where solar ceremonies were performed. The 13 towers might represent 13 phases of the sun, 13 deities, or 13 sacred points of contact between humans and the divine. Yet if this were a purely spiritual purpose, why the near-perfect astronomical precision, and why enclose the rituals within a fortress, as if they were secrets not meant for outsiders? Another perspective emphasizes authority. Chankillo may have been a tool of social control in a civilization dependent on the sun's cycles. Those who understood the sun held the power to dictate planting seasons, festivals, and communal behaviors. When the sun aligned with a specific tower, the time had come for planting harvest or ritual sacrifice. The leader, perhaps a priest standing atop the fortress, could proclaim the sun's will to the people. Thus, the solar calendar became a weapon of authority. But a deeper mystery remains, one that prevents Chankillo from ever being fully explained. The 13 stone towers stretching across the horizon are more than an astronomical device. They are a coded riddle. No writings mention them. No symbols or carvings explain them. No burial remains, offerings, or ritual objects reveal their spiritual significance. And there is no evidence of habitation to suggest the site was lived in. All that remains is silence. This silence transforms the question, what was the true purpose of the 13 towers, into one of humanity's most enduring archaeological mysteries. Were they merely for tracking the sun? If so, why 13 towers, a number neither rounded nor symbolically common, yet strangely precise? Could they be related to beliefs in the sun's rebirth? Were the towers gateways between earth and the heavens, passages for deities? Or was the structure designed as a cosmic map, connecting humans to the universe in ways we have yet to comprehend? Some archaeologists speculate that Chankillo may have belonged to a vanished religion, one in which rituals centered on the sun's movement shaped societal order. When the sun passed a tower, a ceremony began. When it left the tower, the ceremony ended. Each tower could have been a portal of time, a marker understood only by the priesthood. A bolder hypothesis suggests Chankillo may have been a philosophical cosmic calendar, built not merely to observe time, but to interpret existence. As the sun shifted across the towers, ancient observers may have seen not just the progression of days, but the transformation of life seasons and cosmic order itself. More than 2 millennia later, the 13 towers of Chankillo still stand silent like guardians of time. They offer no explanation, yet their silence is precisely what makes them irresistible to modern researchers and explorers. Perhaps the true purpose of the 13 towers remains buried beneath the desert sands of Peru. Or perhaps one day a single fragment, a shard of pottery, a collapsed wall, an ancient astronomical tool will unlock the entire mystery. Until then, Chankillo remains one of the most enigmatic monuments left by ancient civilization, a testament to knowledge far beyond its era, and a reminder that our ancestors understood the universe more deeply than we often realize. Adam's Bridge, also known as Rama Setu in Hindu tradition, is one of the most debated, fascinating, and difficult to explain geographical archaeological landmarks in South Asia. Seen from above, the nearly 30-kilometer structure stretching between India and Sri Lanka appears like an ancient bridge submerged halfway beneath the water, straight to an unbelievable degree, uniform enough to raise suspicion and mysterious enough that scientists, cultural historians, and religious scholars have disagreed on its nature for decades. What makes Adam's Bridge extraordinary is not only its strange appearance, but also the deep questions surrounding its origin-age structure and meaning, questions that no one has been able to answer conclusively. Do you think Adam's Bridge is a natural formation or something built by an ancient civilization? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The geological structure of Adam's Bridge becomes especially strange when each layer of its material is examined closely. This formation consists of sand, coral marine sediments, and large stones lying only 1 to 2 meters below the water's surface, a depth too shallow to classify it as a typical coral reef, yet far too uniform to be the random product of ocean dynamics. In many sections, large stones appear in consecutive clusters arranged in chains as if deliberately placed there. The nearly perfect alignment of the entire formation bending only gently with ocean currents makes it resemble an ancient road built along the shortest route connecting India and Sri Lanka. Even more remarkable is that ancient maps, modern satellite imagery, and geological surveys all confirm this unusual level of straightness, uniformity, and continuity. In nature, it is extremely rare for a landform to possess a shape so similar to a man-made causeway, which only deepens the questions surrounding the true origin of Adam's Bridge. The mystery deepens when placed within a cultural context. In the Ramayana epic, the army of Lord Rama is said to have built a massive bridge of stones and logs to cross the sea to Lanka and rescue Sita from the demon king Ravana. What puzzles scholars is that the description in the epic matches the exact location and shape of Adam's Bridge today. For Hindus, Rama Setu is not a natural structure, it is sacred evidence of an ancient event. For scientists, however, the coincidence raises another question. Does the epic reflect an actual historical memory, or is it merely a poetic interpretation of a pre-existing geographical feature? Recent geological surveys have made the mystery of Adam's Bridge even more difficult to explain. When analyzing samples collected along the formation, several research teams found that the coral layer on top is younger than the underlying foundation, a geological paradox indicating that the base rock existed long before the present coral and sediment accumulated. This has led some scientists to describe Adam's Bridge as an ancient foundation that may have once stood above sea level before being buried by the modern ocean. Additionally, many of the large stones beneath the structure do not appear to be native to the region, sparking speculation that they may have been transported from elsewhere by some unknown method in the distant past. However, the evidence gathered so far is still not strong enough to support the hypothesis of human intervention, and the scientific community remains divided between natural explanations and the possibility of unidentified artificial elements. NASA unintentionally fueled the controversy. When the agency released high-resolution satellite images of the region, many media outlets mistakenly reported that NASA had confirmed the bridge was man-made. NASA immediately denied this, stating that they simply captured images without offering any conclusion. Yet the satellite image, with its extremely clear road on the sea appearance, convinced many people that something unusual lies beneath the shallow waters. Purely geological explanations of Adam's Bridge suggest that it is simply a chain of sandbars and coral formations created by fluctuations in sea level over thousands of years. However, several factors make this model difficult to support. The structure stretches in an almost perfectly straight line, a phenomenon rare in nature, especially in a dynamic marine environment. Its material composition is unusually uniform and continuous, resembling a deliberately directed pathway rather than the random product of ocean currents. The presence of large stones interspersed within an area suitable only for sand and coral adds another layer of inconsistency. Some sections even show signs that they may once have been exposed land before being submerged by the sea, raising the possibility that geological processes or ancient influences we do not yet understand may have played a role. Not only geologists and archaeologists are drawn to Adam's Bridge, anthropologists and cultural historians are equally captivated by its mystery. If sea levels were tens of meters lower during the Ice Age, it is entirely possible that this land bridge once emerged as a natural walkway connecting the two landmasses. This raises a compelling question. Did ancient humans use it for migration trade or perhaps as an early cultural exchange route? Yet to this day, no traces of habitation, stone tools, hearths, or temporary structures have been found along its entire length. The complete absence of archaeological evidence causes many scholars to doubt the idea of a man-made bridge. However, this very emptiness opens an even deeper mystery. If humans were ever present here, did the ocean erase all signs of their activity, or are we overlooking something essential about the behavior and adaptability of ancient communities? What was the true purpose of Adam's Bridge? This is what makes Adam's Bridge one of the most hotly contested archaeological and geological enigmas in the world. If it is natural, why does it display such a designed appearance? Not all sandbars and reefs align perfectly between two land masses like a deliberately oriented bridge. Could nature really create a structure identical to one described in an ancient myth? If it is man-made, then what ancient civilization possessed the engineering ability, organization, and technology to construct a nearly 30-kilometer bridge across the sea? We have no tools, no construction records, and no artifact layers, yet is it possible that an ancient civilization existed whose traces were later erased by the ocean? If Adam's Bridge once stood fully above the water, it must have played a strategic role, a trade route, a migration corridor, or even a cultural boundary. But if that were true, the complete silence in historical records is strangely difficult to explain. The question, what was the true purpose of Adam's Bridge, is not merely scientific. It touches the core of human history. Have we underestimated the capabilities of ancient peoples? Is the Ramayana just mythology or a fading memory of a real structure now lost to time? And what allowed such a colossal enigmatic formation to persist for tens of thousands of years without leaving a clear explanation? To this day, Adam's Bridge stands between nature and legend, science and spirituality, reality and the unknown. It reminds us that Earth still holds shadows of a past we cannot fully illuminate, and that some mysteries grow deeper the more we investigate them. Silbury Hill stands in silence across the Wiltshire landscape like an artificial mountain, defying the passage of time. Rising nearly 40 meters high and spanning more than 160 meters across it, is the largest prehistoric mound ever constructed in Europe. But its colossal size is only the surface. What turns Silbury Hill into a legend is its wordless mystery, a monument built over 4,000 years ago with astonishingly sophisticated techniques for its era, yet leaving behind no trace of its purpose. No burials, no rituals, no symbols, no messages, only a massive mound standing still and silent as if guarding a truth humanity has never been able to reach. What do you think Silbury Hill was truly built for? Share your thoughts in the comments below. From the earliest excavations in the 17th century, archaeologists hoped to find a tomb, a treasure, or at least some ritual remains buried inside the mound. But every expectation led to disappointment. Silbury Hill is completely empty. In terms of functional purpose, no burials, no bones, no chambers, no tunnels, no offerings. There are not even signs that humans regularly gathered or performed rituals on its summit or around it. This makes Silbury Hill one of Europe's greatest archaeological mysteries, a structure too large to be incidental, too elaborate to be meaningless, yet incompatible with any known architectural pattern from the ancient world. When archaeologists examined each geological layer inside Silbury Hill, they discovered that it was far from a randomly heaped mound. Instead, it was a deliberately engineered structure with a level of sophistication far beyond its era. At its core lies a tightly compacted chalk nucleus surrounded by darker clay layers interwoven with tiers of rubble turf and organic materials arranged in deliberate order. Each layer marks a new construction phase that unfolded over centuries, proving that many generations contributed to this monumental work. Maintaining such continuous building required stable social organization, strong communal cohesion, and a spiritual belief powerful enough to outlast the lifespan of any single generation. Yet precisely because there are no ritual traces or signs of practical use, the biggest question becomes even more haunting. Why was such a colossal mound necessary? Why would a Neolithic community, struggling daily for survival, invest roughly 18 million hours of labor into a structure that shows no evidence of practical function? It was not military, not agricultural, not residential. So, what was its purpose? One of the most common theories suggests that Silbury Hill was an artificial sacred mountain, a cosmic symbol worshipped by ancient people. However, when compared with other ritual sites of the same era, this hypothesis quickly becomes problematic. If Silbury truly functioned as a ceremonial center, archaeologists should have found traces such as offerings, ash layers burned ground or pottery fragments, footprints from gatherings, or at least some surface alteration caused by long-term ritual use. Yet all such evidence is entirely absent. This creates a puzzling paradox, a structure that appears sacred yet shows no signs of religious activity, a monumental symbol that conveys no concrete visible message at all. Some scholars propose that Silbury Hill may have been constructed as an astronomical observation structure aligned with solar or lunar cycles, especially since it sits within the larger ceremonial landscape of Avebury. However, when the actual sightlines are analyzed, this theory reveals major weaknesses. Unlike Stonehenge with its almost perfectly aligned observational axes, Silbury Hill is too enclosed, its views obstructed, and it possesses no architectural features that direct or frame sunlight. As a result, although the idea seems plausible at first glance, the physical evidence is not strong enough to support the notion that Silbury Hill ever functioned as an ancient observatory. Some researchers suggest that Silbury Hill may have served as an enormous territorial marker, representing the authority of a prehistoric tribe. However, this hypothesis lacks solid evidence. A structure meant to assert territorial control would typically include identifiable symbols, such as carvings, motifs, or cultural markers, yet Silbury Hill contains none. Moreover, it is difficult to believe that a Neolithic community would devote centuries of labor simply to create a gigantic signpost that conveys no clear message. The deeper scholars investigate, the clearer it becomes that Silbury Hill reflects a worldview entirely foreign to modern logic. Today, any large structure must have a clear purpose: strategic, ritualistic, scientific, political, or economic. But Silbury Hill does not fit any of these frameworks. The most unsettling possibility is not that we have failed to find its purpose, but that its purpose never existed in the way we understand purpose. Among all the theories surrounding Silbury Hill, the question that most profoundly haunts archaeologists and thinkers alike is the purpose of the monument itself. Perhaps Silbury Hill was not created for astronomical observation, nor for burial, nor for political or territorial authority, like many other ancient sites. Instead, it may represent an entirely unfamiliar worldview, a philosophy that modern humans no longer possess. For the people of the Neolithic era, form space, and the multi-generational act of construction may have been the true meaning. Building an enormous artificial hill may not have been intended for practical use at all, but rather to express shared belief, reinforce social cohesion, and reflect a cosmic understanding that we can no longer comprehend. Silbury Hill thus appears to be a monument that exists outside the language of modern humanity. It does not communicate through symbols, carvings, or any visible functional purpose. Instead, it communicates through its sheer presence, a massive silent mound standing in the open plains, heavy with unspoken meaning. We can measure its layers, analyze its construction phases, and determine the precise age of each stratum. Yet we cannot reconstruct the mindset of the culture that spent centuries building something with no apparent function. Perhaps the greatest mystery of Silbury Hill is not buried beneath the soil, but lies in the spaces between uncertainty. When we look at it, instead of answers, we are confronted with an ever-deepening question. What could drive a prehistoric community to create such a monumental structure? One that stands still, wordless, functionless, and seemingly in defiance of every logic of the modern world. Perhaps the lack of a clear purpose was their true intention. Perhaps the act of building, carried across many generations, served as a way to strengthen communal identity, preserve tradition, or connect with the spiritual realm. And it is also possible that Silbury Hill is a message intended for the future, a kind of intellectual challenge compelling later generations to acknowledge that entire systems of thought, belief, and understanding of the world have vanished from human memory. After centuries of study, Silbury Hill still stands a giant mound with no definitive explanation. It reveals nothing, yet refutes nothing. Its silence, its refusal to conform to any known category, makes it one of humanity's greatest archaeological enigmas, monument built with extraordinary effort, yet fully concealing the meaning behind its creation, challenging every generation that follows. For more than a century, the world of archaeology and ancient mystery research has been drawn into a strange narrative, the discovery of giant human skeletons believed to be the remains of the Nephilim beings mentioned in ancient texts and the Bible. Images of skeletons 3, 4, even 6 meters long being unearthed from the ground have constantly stirred the public into a mix of excitement and skepticism. Although most circulated photos were later proven to be staged or edited, the curious thing is this: the story never disappears. It returns in cycles each time, expanding wider, stretching across continents, raising questions even harder to explain than before. Do you believe these giant skeleton reports hint at a forgotten chapter of human history, or are they just modern myths reborn again and again? Share your thoughts below. What makes the Nephilim stand out from other ancient legends is their direct connection with the Hebrew Bible, which describes giants on the earth in those days, the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men. This blending of supernatural and human elements forms a dense layer of mystery, causing every report of giant skeletons to immediately capture the attention of both believers and skeptics. It is not merely archaeology, it touches religion, culture, mythology, and the identity of human civilization. From the late 19th to the early 20th century, numerous reports across North America described the discovery of unusually tall skeletons buried within Adena and Hopewell Mound sites. Many accounts claimed femurs far longer than the limits of modern human anatomy skulls, with abnormally large volumes or cranial structures inconsistent with Homo sapiens. However, these records were often vague, lacking standardized measurements, and in some cases carried the sensational tone typical of newspapers of that era. The most controversial aspect is that most of the referenced specimens later disappeared under unclear circumstances, leaving no trace in museums or research institutions. Their absence created the perfect void in which the Nephilim legend could flourish, a gray zone where science cannot fully confirm yet cannot completely deny. One of the most persistent debates involves the Smithsonian Institution. Many people believe that the Smithsonian once collected and destroyed skeletons that did not fit the accepted evolutionary timeline. Though no solid evidence supports this claim, the lack of transparency in some historical reports keeps suspicion alive, thickening the fog around the Nephilim legend. Whenever the public senses that something might be hidden, ancient mysteries flourish. It is astonishing that legends of giants do not appear only in the Middle East, but spread across the entire ancient world, from the Titans and Gigantes of Greece to the Jotun of Norse mythology, to the Rakshasa and Daitya of Hindu tradition, and even the towering deities of the Maya and Olmec all describe beings far larger than modern humans. This repetition has led many scholars to wonder whether a kind of collective memory might exist, recalling an ancient group of people with extraordinary stature, or whether these myths are faint remnants of a lineage long vanished. Are these merely cultural symbols or echoes of a reality buried deep within history? When observing the massive stone blocks weighing hundreds or even thousands of tons in megalithic sites like Baalbek, many people question whether ancient humans truly possessed the strength and means to move and position them with such precision. Although modern science offers reasonable explanations involving pulleys, ramps, and large, coordinated labor forces, the extraordinary scale of these stones still exceeds ordinary imagination. This gap between what ancient people are believed to have been capable of and the sheer magnitude of the structures is what keeps the giant builders' hypothesis alive, a suggestion of a power that seems to surpass conventional historical understanding. What keeps the Nephilim mystery alive today is the absence of verifiable physical evidence. All claimed giant skeletons have either been lost, rejected for failing archaeological standards, or survive only in photographs, which can be easily falsified. Without concrete evidence to test every possibility remains open, allowing the narrative to persist through generations. The overlap between archaeological uncertainty and mythological symbolism creates a uniquely compelling gray zone, a space where science cannot fully deny and mythology cannot fully confirm. This is the fertile ground where ancient mysteries grow strongest. What makes the Nephilim one of the most enduring ancient mysteries is not the existence of verified giant skeletons, but the fact that their story survives across time, transcending religion, geography, and culture. It feels as if the legend itself carries a mission, an encoded message woven through civilizations urging humanity to keep asking, who were the Nephilim really? And why must their story be told? One theory suggests that tales of giants are actually traces of ancestral memory, reflecting encounters between Homo sapiens and earlier human species of exceptional size. Some prehistoric skeletal studies show that individuals of Homo erectus or Homo heidelbergensis could possess physical proportions far larger than modern humans. If these groups coexisted and interacted with our ancestors, such encounters could easily evolve over thousands of years into legends of giant beings. However, many scholars believe the Nephilim hold symbolic value more than historical accuracy. In religious texts, giants often represent chaos, moral decline, or forces beyond human control. In the Bible, they appear as a sign of a corrupted world just before the Great Flood. Viewed this way, the Nephilim serve as a warning. When human order collapses, the giants re-emerge in the form of catastrophic consequences. A bolder theory suggests the Nephilim may be remnants of an unknown species, or lineage, perhaps a hybrid population, or a now extinct group unrecorded by history. Our understanding of human evolution still contains vast blind spots, so this hypothesis, while unproven, cannot be dismissed entirely. Another interpretation views the Nephilim as tools for shaping moral discipline and social order. By portraying beings too powerful, too large to control ancient societies, could reinforce teachings about human humility and the dangers of overstepping natural limits. In many myths, giants represent the boundary between what humanity can handle and the disaster that follows when that boundary is crossed. But the most pressing questions remain. If the Nephilim were merely symbolic, why do so many unrelated civilizations describe such similar beings? And if they were real, why have their traces nearly vanished from the archaeological record? It is this tension between symbolism and history that gives the Nephilim legend its remarkable longevity. The story does not aim to provide an answer. Instead, it invites humanity to continue exploring, doubting, and rethinking what we believe we know. Perhaps the true purpose of the Nephilim is not to be solved, but to awaken in us the eternal desire to understand our origins and our limits. Hidden in the desolate hills of Peru's Pisco Valley lies a structure so strange, so wildly out of place, that even seasoned archaeologists struggle to describe it. Stretching across the landscape like a precise, deliberate scar, carved into the earth, the Band of Holes is a formation of more than 8,000 perfectly shaped pits, arranged in unnaturally straight lines. It doesn't resemble anything left behind by the Inca or by any known civilization. In fact, it resembles nothing else on Earth. Its sheer scale, its impossible precision, and its complete lack of parallels in world archaeology transform this site into one of humanity's most perplexing ancient enigmas, one that modern science, despite all its tools, still cannot decode. Who do you think created this mysterious Band of Holes, and what was its true purpose? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Seen from the ground, the circular pits of the Band of Holes appear like countless shallow depressions, each less than a meter wide, yet arranged with an uncanny level of uniformity. But when viewed from above, the entire structure reveals an entirely different character, a continuous elongated strip that remains almost perfectly straight even as it cuts across rugged terrain, sloping hillsides, and areas that should have distorted any ancient surveying line. This near-perfect alignment shows that the pits were not dug randomly. They were positioned according to a calculated system whose precision far exceeds what we typically associate with pre-Inca civilizations. There is no deviation in direction, no adjustment to the natural irregularities of the land, as if the ancient builders possessed a routing method or surveying technology that we still cannot explain. It is this almost impossible precision that makes the Band of Holes one of the most perplexing archaeological structures in all of South America. When examined more closely, the perplexing aspect is not just the sheer number of pits, but the way they are divided into segments, each with a completely different layout, suggesting clear, intentional design. In some stretches, the pits align in a single thread-like row. In others, they split into two perfectly parallel lines, only to suddenly shift into clusters of 3 or 4 pits grouped together as if encoding some form of information. Certain sections form flawlessly straight paths, while others zigzag in an unpredictable rhythm. These patterned yet undecipherable changes have led many researchers to believe that the Band of Holes was not created randomly, but as part of a system with a specific purpose, whether ritualistic, measurement-related, territorial, or something entirely unknown, remains a mystery. Such calculated variations imply that the ancient builders were attempting to convey a message or fulfill a function that we still do not understand. What puzzles archaeologists the most is that every single pit is completely empty. No bones, no artifacts, no grain residue, and no signs of rituals or any human activity ever taking place. There isn't even lining ash or tool marks left on the walls of the pits. For a massive construction that would have required enormous labor and time, this absolute absence of content is the greatest paradox. The Band of Holes feels like a device whose function has been erased, a structure whose original purpose has vanished with time. For decades, researchers have tried to explain the Band of Holes through familiar hypotheses, yet each one collapses when confronted with actual evidence. If it were a storage facility, there should be traces of grain protective lining, or at least organic residue, but none exists. If it were a mining site, there should be minerals or signs of specialized excavation, yet nothing has been found. The boundary marker theory is also unconvincing. No ancient civilization would invest enormous labor into creating a marker line over a kilometer long. As for the religious or ceremonial interpretation, it lacks even the most basic indicators: no symbols, no offerings, no associated structures. Every explanation feels as though it hits an invisible wall, leaving the impression that all clues to the structure's true purpose have either been erased or never existed in the first place. One of the strangest clues about the band of holes only becomes visible from above. On the ground, the pits appear scattered and meaningless, but from the sky, they merge into a deliberate, geometric strip, like a massive diagram designed to be understood only from a great height. This raises the most perplexing question of all. In an age without hot air balloons, airplanes, or any flying technology, who was this structure meant to communicate with, and from where would they be looking? This very paradox is what makes the Band of Holes more enigmatic than nearly any other ancient monument. Among all the questions surrounding the Band of Holes, the greatest mystery is its true purpose. Although many hypotheses have been proposed, none remain convincing when compared with archaeological evidence. Some scholars suggest it may have served as an inventory system, recording quantities of food population counts or tribute. But if it were merely for counting, why dig thousands of pits into the ground instead of carving symbols onto stone, as so many ancient cultures did? The ritual hypothesis collapses quickly as well. There are no religious traces, no offerings, no accompanying ceremonial structures. The idea that it was a massive signal like the Nazca lines is also unpersuasive because the pits do not form recognizable shapes capable of conveying a message. Astronomical or meteorological theories lack support as there are no signs of instruments or observational infrastructure. Even the notion of a map or directional system seems implausible. Such a colossal undertaking far exceeds the practical needs of any ancient civilization. When every explanation fails, the Band of Holes becomes defined by its greatest void, a structure with a clear physical form, yet no revealed function, mirroring the pits themselves, deliberately created but empty of answers. A deeper layer of mystery surrounding the Band of Holes lies in the absolute silence of history. There are no ancient texts, no surviving folklore, and no recorded accounts that mention this massive structure, as if every memory of it had been erased from humanity's collective consciousness. This becomes even more perplexing when considering the scale and labor required to construct it. How could a project of such magnitude exist without any culture claiming it? This anomaly has led many researchers to suggest that the Band of Holes may belong to a civilization even older than Paracas or Chincha, a culture that vanished before leaving a trace in written history. Today, the Band of Holes still lies on the dry hillside of Peru, like a message we can see but cannot comprehend. It is too straight, too long, too precise, and too bizarre to fall neatly into any known category. It appears like a blueprint designed for the sky, not the earth. And perhaps that is why it captivates us so deeply. The Band of Holes is not just an archaeological site. It is a question, a mystery without an answer, a void that modern science has yet to fill. At first, it looks like nothing more than a weathered stone pulled from the roots of an old tree, just another relic left behind by immigrants carved for fun or forgotten by time. But the moment your eyes catch the strange runes etched across its surface, everything changes. This is not an ordinary stone. The Kensington Rune Stone stands at the crossroads of history and myth, an artifact that should not exist where it was found, written in a script that should not appear in North America, telling a story that should not have happened. For more than 100 years, it has sparked fierce debates among linguists, archaeologists, and historians. Every new study only deepens the confusion. Every explanation creates new contradictions. It is a mystery that refuses to die, a silent challenge carved into stone, daring us to question everything we think we know about the past. What do you think about the Kensington Rune Stone? Do you believe it's a forgotten trace of Viking explorers or just a clever modern forgery? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The stone was discovered in 1908 by Olaf Oman, a Swedish-American farmer in Minnesota. While clearing land to remove a tree root, he found a heavy stone weighing more than 70 kilograms entangled in the roots of a cottonwood tree. When he brought the stone into the light, deeply carved characters appeared: Norse runes. A runestone buried deep in the North American interior, thousands of kilometers from places known to have been visited by Vikings. The discovery shocked the archaeological community immediately. From that moment, the Kensington runestone entered history as a question without an answer. The runic text made the mystery even stranger. It describes an expedition in 1362 involving 8 Geats and 24 Norsemen. They pushed deep into the continent, camped near a lake, and discovered that several members had met a horrific death. The tone is somber, as if the writer was trying to leave behind a final record for future generations. If the stone is authentic, it would mean the Vikings not only reached the Canadian coast, as confirmed by sites like Lonceau Meadows, but traveled all the way to Minnesota, nearly 500 years before Columbus. The controversy surrounding the Kensington runestone becomes most heated when linguists examine each rune carved into its surface. They discovered several rune forms that never appeared during the medieval period, but only in Scandinavian documents from the 18th or even 19th century. The presence of these two modern characters led many scholars to conclude that the stone could not date to the 14th century as the inscription claims. However, the hypothesis that Olaf Oman created the text is also unconvincing. He only knew a handful of basic runes and had no linguistic background to compose a long passage with complex structure and rare variations. This contradiction has made the linguistic debate increasingly difficult to resolve, as no explanation fits the evidence without creating new doubts. Geological analyses of the Kensington runestone only deepen the mystery. Some carved lines appear sharp and deep, as if they were created recently, while others have rounded edges, suggesting they may have existed for centuries. A number of specialists argue that the degree of weathering is consistent with a medieval origin, yet others counter that Minnesota's harsh climate could have caused the stone to erode unusually quickly. This contradiction prevents science from reaching any definitive conclusion. Another strange detail is the discovery site itself. Minnesota is not a place Vikings would logically have reached. No historical map or document indicates they traveled so far inland. The only possible routes would involve navigating a complex river system, extremely risky for an expedition in the 14th century. And yet a stone describing the death of expedition members is found exactly there. Too artificial or too coincidental. For more than a century, countless theories have been proposed to explain the origin of the Kensington runestone. Yet each one quickly encounters its own contradictions. Some argue that the stone was merely an elaborate prank by local youths, but few would have had the knowledge of runes needed to carve such a complex inscription. Another theory claims that nearby Scandinavian carpenters created it, though no evidence supports this idea. Even the suggestion that it is a medieval artifact later altered cannot resolve the implausibility of its discovery location. No explanation is strong enough to reconcile all the conflicting pieces of evidence. The biggest and most difficult question surrounding the Kensington runestone is not who created it or when it was carved, but why it was created. This is the core issue that has turned the stone into one of the most persistent archaeological mysteries in North America. If the inscription truly dates back to the 14th century, what was the purpose of the Viking explorers in leaving behind such a message? The text does not resemble any typical type of record. It is not a map, not a trade document, and not a territorial claim. Instead, it carries the tone of a final farewell, an urgent attempt by someone on the brink of despair to record their last moments in hopes that future generations might understand what happened. The mention of several members dying only strengthens the idea that the inscription came from a lone survivor documenting the tragic end of his group. But this theory immediately encounters a major contradiction. If this was indeed a final message, why was the stone buried beneath a tree? Vikings were known for erecting memorial stones in visible locations to mark significant events or honor the dead. Hiding it underground makes the act of leaving a message for someone else seem illogical, even absurd. The only somewhat plausible explanation is that the stone was not intentionally buried, but was gradually covered by time and nature. Yet this has never been proven. Another theory suggests that the stone was not a farewell at all, but a marker intended for a second group expected to return to the area. It could have served as a rendezvous point, a boundary marker, or a signal meaning we reached this place. If true, it would imply a level of planning and geographic awareness far beyond what traditional history has recorded for Viking expeditions in inland North America. But could a tired, under-resourced expedition in unknown territory truly operate with such precision? The theory that the stone is a 19th century creation opens an entirely different path. What was the forger's motive? If it was for profit, the idea falls apart immediately. No one would have paid for a strange runic stone at that time. If it was a prank, why go to such extraordinary lengths, carving a long runic inscription and burying the stone under a large tree? The level of effort far exceeds that of a typical joke. And if the intention was to create a cultural symbol for Scandinavian immigrants, why is there no historical record of any movement or person behind such an effort? These contradictions between all proposed explanations make the purpose of the stone the central question that no one has been able to solve. If the stone is authentic, North American history must be rewritten to include an unknown Viking chapter. If it is a forgery, then the forger possessed remarkable knowledge far beyond that of an ordinary frontier farmer in 19th century America. And above all, whether real or fake, someone created it, but for reasons that have remained completely hidden in darkness. This question, why not who or when, lies at the heart of the Kensington runestone enigma. It is an object that fits no timeline, no geographic logic, and no linguistic pattern. It contains too many signs of forgery to be accepted, yet too many strange details to be dismissed entirely. It exists on the boundary between authenticity and deception, and that is what makes it one of America's most famous archaeological puzzles. To this day, the Kensington runestone sits in a museum, posing a silent challenge to anyone who tries to solve it. Who carved me? And what purpose did I serve?